Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 68 of ThROH The Years, the podcast that reviews Ring of Honor show by show from the beginning. My name is Trevor Dame, joined, as always, by Matt Feuerstein, but we are also joined by a special second-time guest. We haven't had them on for 3 years, way too long. Friend of the show. You might know them from their many appearances on the Joe vs. the World podcast. You might know them from their own spin-off, the Justin Shapiro Show. You might know them from his many podcasts on the Alan 4L brand, currently the Pro Wrestling Torch, but previously the Dr. Keith Present Show on the Observer site. You might know him from that stupid, horrible trivia show that Joe Gagne does, the 5-Star Match Game. Or you might even know him recently. I know, Justin, you occasionally do appearances on the Elite Beat podcast. You cover that newfangled AEW. Great to have him back, finally, way overdue, Justin Shapiro.
Hi, my two great friends. I'm thrilled to be here. If I could push back on one thing, I don't think it's been too long since I've been on your show. I think it's been probably the perfect amount of time because I've not seen any Ring of Honor shows in between the 3 years of broadcast time, chronological time. But yeah, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled and honored. No pun intended. That's from the show name. But I think the difference between now and March 2018 is, like, your show has built up a lot of goodwill and acclaim, and to the point where now I fear me being on it could ruin it somehow.
Yeah, everybody hated it back then.
I just feel like you've built up a respected listenership of people who maybe want to hear from guests who know about Ring of Honor's history and context. So
yeah, Gabe Sapolsky is listening, Justin. He's going to be mad if you get any of the facts wrong.
What a freaking rube! So, yeah, I'm mostly here to learn. I'm here to observe, and I'm going to lay in the cut and basically just take it all in. Consider me a front row seat to see two of the best do their thing.
It's been 3 the years since Justin has been on the show. Pun intended. I'm expecting some big time puns here, Justin. That just so you know, when you're on the air, that's really what everyone's listening for. You better have some ready to go.
Let's see. Through ROH. If it was 2 years, it would be TWOH. 2 the years. Was that good?
Yeah. It was good.
So, pause. So, yeah, it was good.
So, Trevor, I have to make a complaint. So, 2 weeks ago when we recorded, it was a really freaking hot day in May. It was like 90 degrees. And then today, it's a pretty darn hot day. And last weekend, when we didn't record, it was like the coldest Memorial Day weekend on record. And it was would have been very comfortable to record. But instead, we're just choosing the hottest Saturdays to record. And I guess it's not your fault at all, but I'm blaming you anyway.
Well, here it was unseasonably hot for the entire week, except today. So, yeah, I've definitely done something just to help me and hurt you, definitely.
That makes sense.
Help me hurt you is my favorite Jerry Maguire quote.
Oh, that's I have a pair of gloves with those written on them. I got from the WWE shop.
I could never wear gloves outside today. It's too hot.
It is real hot, and I know we talked about air conditioner recording politics, and I think I beat the system. I am running the bedroom air conditioner and letting it flow into this room. So it's truly the best of all worlds.
Truly the smartest of us. So, yeah, as always, I just always do the little plug for the feeds, even though, as Matt pointed out a couple episodes ago, like, you're plugging something that people are already clearly listening to. But I just, in the sense of, if you're listening on the Pro Wrestling Only feed, but you, for some reason, just want a feed that is just us, because some people over the years have mentioned that, we have a feed now that's just us. If you listen to the feed that's just us, and you want a feed that has a bunch of other good wrestling podcasts on it, a whole network, if you will, we have that. If you want to listen, that's the Pro Wrestling Only feed. If you want YouTube, we are inexplicably still somehow on YouTube. Like, one person listens, but they seem to listen a lot. And
feed me more feeds. That's what I say.
More me feed. More me feed.
So, I guess the only news that happened between the last show and this show that is significant is we've been covering every episode, the saga of CM Punk getting the rumors. Is he going to go to WWE? Is he going to go somewhere else? Finally, between the last show and this one, The Observer wrote, CM Punk was expected to sign with WWE this week. After his match on the IWA Mid-South show on June 11th in Philadelphia, Ian Rotten cut a promo and teased the idea that Punk's final indie match before joining WWE would be on June 18th, which, of course, would be Death Before Dishonor 3. And, of course, that would not end up being his final match on the indies, but we'll have a lot to talk about with all of that on the next show. But that brings us to the show we're covering today, which is...
I'm sorry, may I interject?
Oh, go, of course, anytime.
I brought two funky fun facts to follow up on last show's business, if you want me to.
Oh, of course.
Okay. One is that
the funkier the better, Justin.
Exactly.
These are some funky funkables. I fished out the June 13th, 2005 Observer if you want clarity on what that number was.
Oh, Justin, yes, that finally. For those who haven't listened to the last episode, Punk, they actually gave this was back when, for some reason, the Observer would be very specific. Sometimes like this is what this guy is asking for on the indies or something. And Dave never does that these days, but back like 20 years ago, he would do that fairly often like that. Like, this is just exactly how much Terry Funk wants if you want to book him. And apparently, like, CM Punk was telling people, like, this is how much I would go to NXT, or I guess back then it was FCW, or Ohio Valley for, and the Observer was completely all blacked out on that section. At least
Redacted.
at least the copy that is all over the internet. But Justin is the real one. He actually has the real stuff. He paid the price and the dollars.
Theoretically, Matt should have. Like, why didn't he help you?
I don't have any of my old Observers anywhere, they're in my parents' house, which I haven't been to in a long time, and I honestly assume that my mother threw them all out.
Oh no, you had
and I never had them organized in the first place. So
yeah, mint condition in those plastic things that keep them perfect. Oh my gosh,
no,
what a nightmare. Mine have been sitting in a closet undisturbed for a good long while, but I got lucky and in one pull of the pile ended up in the 2005. So from there, it was just a few flickers. Do you want to recount your guesstimates from before? Because this really is the moment of truth.
Wasn't it? I think we kind of predicted 40,000 based on like the math of what we were told privately. He actually got was like almost 40,000. And it kind of looked like that would be the number on the newsletter just from the tiny bit I could make out.
Yeah, I mean, certainly 3 of those numbers that you guessed were correct. Should we build it up even more, or should you just want me to say it?
We could do over and under.
Justin, why don't you save it for the very last, the sign-off moment on the show?
Okay. Let me
kidding.
Put this Observer back in its plastic protector until it's ready. Oh my God, just the oxygenated air around it has already started degrading the issue.
You know what's
An
right?
update on CM Punk. Samoa Joe in front of you. One person close to him figured $75,000 downside would be the magic number. As any less he'd probably turn down, but more he'd probably go.
Wow, that is way higher than I thought. And like from what I was told privately by somebody, it was like I think it was around like $40,000. So,
Guess it wasn't the magic number.
And we know it completely did not pay off for him.
He did not make $75,000 in his entire time there. That's a joke.
It's extremely unlikely.
He made a lot more than that.
Talking just briefly about the Observer subscriptions, have either of you guys ever had this? Like when I was younger, I had a hard copy, a paper copy subscription of the Observer for a couple of years. And obviously you're getting like one, occasionally 2 letters a week. And I remember I don't know where they are now, but I just had like a box in my closet full of letters. And there was one time I had this very morbid thought with like, if I died right now, like what if like my mom was cleaning out my closet and being like, oh, Trevor had a lot of love letters, and then they're all just wrestling letters like this. That would have been like the saddest moment. Like imagine how many people in their closets just have like boxes and boxes of letters from Campbell, California. And it's just like,
well, so that means you were more private, because I was like, when I got the Observer at my parents' house, I was like, Mom, did my Observer come yet?
I also had to be upfront about it.
Yeah.
That was my early Japanese wrestling taste. I'd be like, Mom, it's very hot outside. I don't want the VHS tape to melt, so you gotta check the mail right at 1 p.m. You know that's when the mailman comes home. I might not be home till 7. You gotta do it. Don't make me phone. So I was a very cool teenager, obviously. Very, very, very cool.
Well, you will not die. You have staying power. Is that reassuring?
So,
yeah, the only other thing I wanted to...
go
it's
on.
still about Observer, but you were wondering about Jamie Noble's WWE termination.
Yes.
And you said people listening are probably screaming at their listening device saying, I know, call on me. Teacher. And that was me. Teacher, if you want to call on me, I'll tell you what I think happened.
Justin, could you please come to the front of the class and share with everyone what was in your note?
No! I don't have to. Again, it feels weird to throw around semi-serious stories like this compared to back then when we would just talk about conjecture about completely abstract people. And now those people are real, and we all inhabit the same space. So, the far as the story I remember is that the reason, and it sounded so funny on his wiki, was Jamie Noble was fired because he had a staph infection from a steroid injection, and the reason it became a big deal is because he wrote on his insurance form or his medical form, infection due to steroid injection.
So I'm right that they weren't actually testing or anything like that at that point, right?
Exactly. There was all of a sudden created a very unfortunate paper trail where they were like, "Oh, well, that is of course illegal, and you are of course punished."
That's like when people used to get caught having the illegal cable boxes where they get all the channels by taking it into the cable repair place. And to the cable company, my box isn't working anymore.
Yeah, the thing I'm using to steal isn't doing what it's supposed to. Please repair it. Yes, they should do a Casablanca parody thing where it's I am astonished that there are steroid injections happening in the buttocks this year, or whatever that line goes about. Gambling. But that's it. That's all I have. Thank you. That was for me to earn my keep.
Very helpful.
You are already the most helpful guest we've ever had. And thank you.
Okay, listen. The most helpful person who's ever been on the show. Host, present company, all included.
Nice.
So the show we'll get to today is The Future Is Now, which took place June 12th at the Supper Club in New York City, New York, in front of a reported crowd of 600 people. So this was a really crazy big weekend in wrestling, especially in the Northeast, because, we hadn't yet gotten to the crazy WrestleMania weekends where, a billion indies and major promotions would run around WrestleMania weekend. But this was kind of like an early version of that because this was the first big wave of ECW nostalgia. And on this date was the first ECW One Night Stand. But 2 days earlier, there was the Hardcore Homecoming, which was kind of the other ECW reunion show that was done by, I believe, Jeremy Borash and Shane Douglas, with basically every wrestler that WWE wasn't going to put on ECW One Night Stand, be it because they were employed by TNA at the time or just for other grudges or reasons. And so that was on the 10th. Then on the 11th, you had a double shot at the ECW arena with IWA Mid-South running a show, and then CZW running a show that same afternoon, which we might get to at the end of the show, a little touch on that a bit. And then on this day, not only could you have seen The Future Is Now, it was literally, I think Gabe references on commentary that this is 10 blocks away from where ECW One Night Stand is going to be hours later. So you actually could have seen both shows. Now, Matt, Justin, I know this is the first ROH show, Matt, you ever went to, and you took Justin with you. If I remember correctly, you guys did not go to ECW One Night Stand, did you?
No. So
did we?
Justin, would you not have remembered going to ECW One Night Stand?
That show was wild, man.
So what happened was that was the plan.
We took the ferry back to your house.
Yeah, so that was the plan. So Justin and another one of our mutual friends who lived in Arizona, they were all going to come out. We were going to go to One Night Stand, and we were like, oh, hey, let's go to ROH too. Like, we've never been to ROH. That would be a fun thing. They're running a show that afternoon. We could make it a whole day of it. And so I bought the ROH tickets, 3 of them, and I was trying to buy the One Night Stand tickets when they when they went on sale, and I could not. And I was like, I don't remember which tickets I tried to buy first. I don't remember what the on sale dates were. But when we couldn't get One Night Stand tickets, and I think Justin was already set on coming, I was just sort of like, you know what? Let's just do it. We'll go to ROH. We'll watch One Night Stand back at my house or my parents' house because I'd just gotten home from college like less than a month earlier, and it was going to be a big slumber party, and it
was the ECW all-nighter.
Yeah, exactly. Our friend from Arizona could not make it, so it was just Justin and me. Justin, was that your first time in New York City? I forget.
Except for being little and taken there by my parents because we have family in New Jersey.
Gotcha.
And so it was certainly the most scared I was to go to New York, not because of like crimes being done on me, but I had to print out directions and was like, that's so far. It's so big.
I remember telling Justin, because I had been to Justin's house the 2 summers before in outside a couple hours north of Pittsburgh, and I had been there. I went there in the summer of 2003 and 2004. We hung out for a few days. We watched SummerSlam together. It was a good time. And I remember telling Justin, like, because Interstate 80 was the way to get out that way, from here to there. And I remember saying, Justin, you would not believe that I-80 becomes like a 4 to 5 lane highway as you get close to New York City. He was like, no way, man.
Yeah, right.
And then he saw it with his own 2 eyes.
Life changing.
We almost, it was a hypothetical situation where it would have been incredibly rude, perhaps, for me to be like, I don't want to come because I'm scared, after you had come the same exact distance 2 years in a row. But to like really establish my diehard fan bona fides to your listeners, I did not want to go to ECW One Night Stand for any kind of like affinity or nostalgia for ECW. I only wanted to go because I thought it looked like a great WWE work rate card that ended up not actually being great from a work rate standpoint.
Justin, were you not a ECW fan like when it was on at all?
No, I watched it on TNN when it came on because I was like, oh, hey, but that's not, from what I've been told, the ECW that truly moved people.
No,
yeah, I was the same way.
Still, though.
As a Canadian, I had spent my whole, so many years reading in, the aftermags and hearing about how great ECW was. And it was one of those things where, as a Canadian, sometimes this would happen back in the day, where, you would get the thing after it wasn't cool anymore. And that's what it felt like ECW on TNN, where I was like, is this what everyone was talking about? And then later I would learn, this isn't really what everyone was talking about. I was like, it's okay, I guess. I mean, Steve Corino did an angle with Limp Bizkit. That's pretty limp. I don't know. I was
who would put this Cyrus Jabroni on national television?
I don't know if it's controversial to say. Obviously, the TNN era ECW wasn't the best era of ECW by far, but they still had some pretty good stuff going on during that time. It wasn't all bad.
They still had Tajiri, definitely.
And it was better than WCW by a lot.
High praise.
And honestly, I'd say there were some things about 99 ECW that were better than, in my opinion, 99 WWF, which was not my favorite year for the WWF either. So anyway, I'll be the ECW defender here, but I guess I was more of a fan than you guys. I never got to see ECW live, even though I probably could have if I really wanted to. But I started seeing it because it would air in the middle of the night on MSG Network or whatever by the mid 90s. And I remember the first thing I saw was Steve Austin doing a promo in the middle of the night, and I was like, it was December of 95. I was like, what the hell is this? Steve Austin, and he's kind of cursing a little bit, and and it was just a totally different guy. And I didn't watch every single week, but I watched it, regularly enough that I kind of got the vibe. And I definitely ordered the first ECW pay-per-view, Barely Legal, and that was really cool. I felt really cool. And I remember that it started at 9 o'clock on a school night as opposed to 7 o'clock. And my dad was getting really mad that it was like midnight and I was still watching TV and like watching loud wrestling. It was like, when are you going to bed? That's what but also it was a really awesome show. And then my cable company didn't even carry the next two ECW pay-per-views, and that was the whole thing.
When you get to the Ring of Honor shows you went to with your dad, is he going to be a guest on the show?
I'm going to say absolutely not. He went to two shows with me. One in the summer of 2005, one in the summer of 2006. They were both not great shows. And there's no way I'm going to be able to get him to watch. I don't even know if I don't even know if they. Yeah, I don't think there's any way I can get him to watch either of those shows again to go on.
That's tough because your dad is one of those people who's like very sincerely into the idea that like guests who do podcasts should be paid for what they do.
Yeah,
he's very much like James Adomian.
Yeah, he's part of the podcast guest union.
So about the future is now. So clearly, like reading the Observer, they were saying they were hoping to draw big. In fact, I believe Shane Hagedorn told me right before we were going. I said we were on Twitter that we were doing the show tonight. He said a little message which I can get to later. But one of the things he said apparently was Ring of Honor booked this show on a seemingly late notice, probably trying to take advantage, just like probably the Forever Hardcore on the Friday or whatever, and the IWA Mid-South, working Philly, which they usually didn't do in CZW. But anyway,
they pretty much admitted that's what they did. That's what they were doing it for. Even they were upfront about that.
But 600 fans doesn't sound that great, except when you look at this building, for those who have not seen ever The Future Is Now, I mean, this place looks cramped as hell. I mean, it's one of those buildings that has a very distinct look. It has like a balcony and a floor level. But if you watch the show, the fans are packed so close to the ring that on a couple sides of the ring, like the wrestlers have a hard time maneuvering around the ring. So do you guys remember how, because obviously they only shoot from a certain side, we don't get to see kind of the hard cam side, but do you guys remember how, was this place just jam packed, or was it just the kind of the way they configured things for 600 fans?
I remember it being pretty jam packed. What about you, Justin?
I believe we were hard cam, right?
No, we were not. I don't know, because the card cam was facing the entrance. Yeah. We were
okay. We're not.
We were on the opposite side of the hard cam. We were also facing the entrance.
That's what I meant. Sorry. But wow, that's why I need to go to NXT to learn where the hard cam is. But what I remember the homicide, very scary dive into the people being perpendicular to us. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And Jay Lethal, when he escaped through the crowd, he ran by us twice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but do you remember it being very cramped? I do.
I did not notice certainly the really aesthetically displeasing and uncomfortable looking space between the apron and the barrier on the sides until I saw it on this. But in terms of capacity, I don't remember that well.
And oh, sorry. Go on.
It was because I obviously after this went to a lot of ROH shows in a lot of different venues, and I remember thinking because this was the first ROH show I'd been to, oh, are they all like this? It's it has this cool nightclub feel, and it's very small but intimate and packed, and so I just got this sense of what ROH was, and obviously that is not what most ROH shows were, or I don't think any other ROH venue I went to felt like this one. I mean, I'm pretty sure this place had a bathroom attendant.
And there's a bar there too, as we'll see at the end of the show. For anyone that's never seen the Supper Club, it's a very distinct, kind of cool looking building, but you can also tell it's very cramped for once you stick a wrestling ring in there. Yeah,
it's the closest thing I could think of to where I've seen wrestling shows that it sort of reminded me of is when Evolve would have shows at La Boom in Queens, but that was more spacious. You could walk around and stuff, and you could not do that at the Supper Club. It was definitely not a place that would be designed for wrestling. And the vibe was very different than the New Yorker Hotel. Like, the crowd obviously did not have the same level of, like, heat and intensity, and, like, it didn't feel as fun. It felt cool, but it didn't feel as fun. Because the next show I went to after this was Escape from New York, which was back at the New Yorker Hotel, and that was like a whole different vibe. Like, that was just so much louder and bigger, but this was cool in its own way, but it was not a good representation of what ROH really was like.
And my other note, the competition you guys could have gone to see, if you didn't, well, actually, you would have had to have gone to ECW One Night Stand to do this, but my one other little note on this is, reading The Observer, Dave wrote, WWE set up an ECW autograph session, which goes head-to-head with the Ring of Honor show in the afternoon, although that was likely more as a way to sell the ringside seats, open only to those who buy $400 tickets, than as competition for this Ring of Honor show. So if you guys had bought those $400 ringside seats, you could have gone instead to the ECW autograph session. I believe I was reading a live report in the Torch, Derek Bergen, and he apparently went to the show with Dr. Keith. This show did not have the star-studded people of the last show where we joked about how in the commentary did some BS commentary about like, oh, Jay-Z and Puff Daddy are at New York for Ring of Honor. But this show did have, Dr. Keith, Green Lantern fan as usual. I believe Jeremy Borash was said to be there, fresh off helping promote the Hardcore Homecoming show. So, and definitely the first show with Justin and Matt there. So the movers and shakers did show up. Yes. But when I was reading their recap, they were just saying that Derek Bergen said he and Dr. Keith attempted during like intermission of the ROH show to try and run down and get autographs at the ECW autograph session and then make it back in time. But eventually they just gave up and didn't go to the autograph session and told the taxi to turn around. But I thought, man, like, I don't have the energy to even go to one wrestling show, let alone try and go to a different autograph session in the intermission of the wrestling show I'm planning to return to in New York. Like, kudos to those guys for even attempting to have that, because that is way more energy than I have for basically any endeavor in my life. So
it just speaks to how small Manhattan really is. I mean, both of these things were in different parts of Midtown, but like, the Hammerstein is on 34th, between 8th and 9th. I'm pretty sure. I haven't been there in a few years. And the I don't remember where the Supper Club was, but I think it was in the 40s. So it's like,
on commentary, Gabe says it's about 10 blocks away. I don't know if that's true or not, but basically he trusts the idea that, hey, like all these fans could go to the Hammerstein tonight to see ECW One Night Stand.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, that was the only time I ever went to the Supper Club. It wasn't a place I frequented. Also, it was in Times Square, which is not the place that New Yorkers like to hang out in.
Well,
really?
We got to eat at my favorite restaurant.
Yeah, Justin, I'm not even going to talk about where we had dinner. It's too embarrassing as a New Yorker to mention where you and I had dinner on Saturday night. But I will say that on Sunday night, after we left the ECW show, we went home to watch the one night. I mean, after we left the ROH show, we went home to watch One Night Stand at my house. My parents were barbecuing, and I tried to get Justin to try macaroni salad, and he almost did it, and he was just like, "No, I can't do it."
You know what I'm going to say, Justin? You made the right call. Macaroni salad, not good.
The texture.
I like it.
This is June 2005, so you have to understand how fresh, or I guess about a year old, the classic Joe Bluth line about what about macaroni, let me finish salad was for me and Matt to say repeatedly at that time.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say that the macaroni salad was a year old, and I have to tell you it was not. It was fresh. It was. I just looked it up, and the Supper Club was. I don't think it exists anymore, but it was on 47th Street, West 47th.
Supper Club is famous to me as a venue because there's a famous Bob Dylan show that he recorded a live special there with a very intriguing set list in 1993, and then scrapped.
Was that exciting for you at the time? Because I don't remember you going off about that.
Seems like it may have came up briefly, but then not gone into too much conversation between us, because how interesting is it to you and not me?
I do have one other pre-show story for Trevor if you want to hear it.
Okay. Yes.
Well, remember we had 3 tickets because we had another friend that was supposed to come, and So we were waiting in line to get in, and there was a guy, trying to buy tickets, and we were just like, "Would you just like to have our ticket?" Because we were feeling bad that we had this unused seat, and he took it, and it turned out to be a nice guy. We never saw him again, but a very nice guy. I think he came down from Massachusetts to see the show. I think he was also there to see One Night Stand as well. And he, as we were walking by, he saw Carrie Silkin, who I did not know who he was at the time, but I learned who he was, shortly thereafter. And he said, "Hey, Carrie, these guys just gave me a free ticket in third row." And he was like, "Oh, great, generous." So Carrie Silkin, thanks for generous, Justin.
If he knows Carrie, he probably should have gone to him for the hookup and not us, I think.
Well, exactly.
To me, I hope your listeners picture you and me as just the nicest, sweetest little gentleman, because that's all we were trying to be.
Yeah, I had a ponytail at the time, so that makes me look a little bit sleazier. And then during the pandemic, my hair grew so long that I didn't get my hair cut in almost 2 years, and I had a ponytail again, and I just got it cut for the first time like 2 weeks ago.
I like this silence. But by the way, if you guys, you would have no reason to, but if you were lucky enough to see Matt's haircut, it's a primo haircut now. Great looking hair.
It looks just like primo cologne.
Yeah, I asked for the primo. They were like, "Are you sure you wouldn't like a Carlito?" And I was like, "I don't think my hair can do that."
Yeah,
so sorry. What were you gonna say?
Oh, it was another stupid diversion bit. No, go ahead.
Trevor, this is good stuff, right?
No, it is good stuff. This is probably the most tangents we had, but that's why you have Justin on, and also because you guys have personal anecdotes, because you were at the show. This is the very first Ring of Honor show Matt ever attended live, and Justin, and not me, because I've never been to one. But
it's worth noting that we sat with a complete stranger, isn't it? Isn't it, Trevor?
Well, and his name, why don't you tell us who his name was? His name was Tony Khan.
Yeah.
No,
I wish.
Connected.
But so we opened the show up. If you watch the DVD, they peppered this DVD throughout with clips from the WB11 segments that Ring of Honor did promoting the Manhattan Mayhem show. We recapped those segments without seeing them on that episode of the podcast, but they show the segments throughout on this show, and just, I guess, to promote, just to say, hey, we were on TV. But I do want to say, in my notes for that episode, the PW Insider, whoever recapped that, said Julie Chen was the host of those segments. I thought, from Big Brother and stuff. And watching this, it becomes immediately apparent, whoever did that recap, it's not Julie Chen. It's a completely different woman named Julie Chang. So my incredible apologies for the mix-up. But
sorry, both Julies who are both listening. We apologize greatly.
As soon as I saw the clip, I went, "Oh God, that is not Julie Chen. That is a different woman." And we open with a 15-second clip from their appearance on WB11 in New York with Julie Chang, and the clip was basically
Julie Chen.
Exactly.
Wife of Les Moonves.
Very
predator.
I don't know Julie Chang, but I'm going to say she's the better Julie here.
Yeah, you can see why a company that had been through what Ring of Honor had to distance themselves from Julie Chen.
So, Julie Chen, she still stands behind Rob. But so this clip was basically just the newscasters introducing Julie Chen. Introducing Ring of Honor, actually. So anyway, cut to the card.
Too close to the wrestlers, in my opinion. That seemed dangerous for Julie.
Yeah, the whole segment. They had an outdoor ring set up, and she's like in the ring. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but she's like basically right on top of the wrestlers as they're doing spots. She's even doing spots with them. But cut to the Carnage backstage. They had to spend 3 months at home with their wives and kids, nagging them to death because they lost the match with the Ring Crew Express at Scramble Cage, where they had to spend 3 months away from Ring of Honor. Loke says no one cares, though. No one cares about the buckets they've bled, about all the wars they've had, all the dues they've paid. DeVito says it's all Dunn and Marcos' fault. And Loke reminds us that 3 years ago at Night of Appreciation, they destroyed Dunn and Marcos in a match, and they said that was the easiest night of their lives. They say it'll happen again tonight, And Loke ends as he walks away by just saying without context the words nudie bar. He doesn't even have the strength anymore to say, let's go to the nudie bar after the show. He just says, nudie bar.
I just realized something. The Carnage Crew's...
You're not recording.
Yeah, no, we're recording.
Okay.
The Carnage Crew's wives are basically like Vera from Cheers. That was Norm's wife. We never saw her, but he complained about her a lot. And I always wanted them to finally make an appearance one day, but they never did. Just like Vera. Vera never showed up on Cheers, right? I don't think so.
Who would be Sam in Ring of Honor? Would it be Bryan Danielson? He's so nice.
I mean, I'd say CM Punk because he's the biggest ladies' man.
Mm-hmm.
And just like Sam, he doesn't drink.
That's right. Okay, perfect.
Whoa.
We got it.
Perfect.
Done.
Now I'm just imagining Ted Danson with a lot of like straight edge tattoos on him. But
the bigger question is who's the Diane? No, just kidding.
A series of women, apparently.
In Ring of Honor terms, I'm not sure what his romantic history was there, but we can certainly name the love triangles that he's been in.
Lacey was sort of more of like a Rebecca.
I have to admit, we've come to the end of my Cheers knowledge.
Well, I mean,
you gotta check it out, man. It's a good show. I heard. No, it is actually.
What do you prefer, the early seasons with Lita, or when they bring AJ Lee on at the
end? We cut to Jay Lethal backstage in a neck brace. He says he's been out with an injury because the last time he played by the Rottweilers rules, but tonight they play by Jay Lethal's rules. I wrote in my notes, this promo was 1 or 2 sentences long and somehow still bad.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen. Jay Lethal, as we know, got a lot better at promos. I'm sure he would say the same thing, not good at them in 2005. It's notable.
I think that's one thing not that necessarily we've learned, we probably knew this, but like watching guys like Rocky Romero or the Briscoes or Jay Lethal, like you can't necessarily judge a guy by it seems like you can learn wrestling. A lot of wrestlers learn wrestling well before they learn how to be like comfortable in front of a microphone and charismatic. Like I still haven't learned how to do that. And I've been talking for years now in front of one, but like it's amazing how good these guys became when some of these guys, if you were just going off your first impression, you would just be like, that guy will never cut a good promo in his entire life. And then they turn out to be great just like 5 or 10 years later.
Yeah, it just goes to show, it really does go to show you got to give people some time to develop because it is possible. You can't judge somebody's upside too soon. 2029,
I'm really going to come into my own, I feel like. But until then, I'll just have to soldier on talking about stuff like the opening match of the show, which was Colt Cabana defeating Jimmy Rave, who was escorted to the ring by Diablo Santiago, Jay Chung, Killer Cruel, Omar Tortuga, and Prince Nana. Colt won via pinfall in 9 minutes 33 seconds when he did a leg trap cradle, basically kind of the Bret Hart, Davey Boy Smith SummerSlam finish where he kind of sits down in a cradle attempt and just holds onto the guy's legs and gets the win. Matt, what do you think about this as a way to kick off the show? This was your first live Ring of Honor match.
Yeah, both. So don't you think that given the narrowness of the ringside area, they should have taken a less is more approach in terms of who gets to be at ringside and not brought out like Mike Cruel and the Outcast Killers and Prince Nana and Jay Chuck? That was too many people to have in that narrow of a space. I felt bad for everybody actually trying to just like perform in that situation. That was the first thing I noticed. But I guess the one thing I would say about this match is way more than most ROH openers, this was a very like WWE house show style opener in terms of like a lot of comedy, like these are two, pushed guys, who could have had a really good wrestling match and they just, didn't really try for that at all. It was like, they were doing a lot of silly stuff. Cabana kept pantsing Jimmy Rave, which is got holy shit chants. The crowd definitely enjoyed it. Colt was very excited. He was wearing polka dots. He was doing Dusty Rhodes spots. He was bionic elbows and stuff. Didn't seem angry at all at the guy who tried to like maim his best friend multiple times. It was just a real silly silly vibe to the match. But solidly worked, I suppose. It was just they were not trying to have a good ROH style match. They were trying to have a WWF style house show opener that got the crowd going. And I think they did a pretty good job for that. A pretty good job of that. At one point, Gabe hypes AJ Styles' upcoming return to ROH on almost a full-time basis, which is, was almost exciting. But they just, Cabana was mostly in control. He got the win with just like another roll-up type of deal, a sudden roll-up. A lot of sudden finishes on this show, I thought. And I thought it was kind of surprising that they put Colt over when they were really, pushing Rave so much before. But then I realized he has a pure title match on the next show, so it does make sense. But yeah, kind of disappointing if you were like, oh, look at what these two guys can do. But the crowd appreciated the goofy antics, I suppose.
Justin, what do you think? This was also your first Ring of Honor match. What a coincidence.
Incorrect. I was on your show once.
Oh, wait. Oh, God. Why did I keep thinking? You literally were on that Pittsburgh show. Oh.
That was your trivia question, and you blew it.
Let's delete
What was Justin's first ROH match?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to ask me what the opener of that show was, I don't remember. So. You convinced me for a second until I stopped and thought about it. But I think Matt's comparison to a WWE house show opener was very astute, and I like that he used the word silly 4 or 5 times, because one of the only things I have written in my notes for this match is the words being silly and a smiley face.
Jimmy Rave literally gets pantsed in this match.
I have 4 or 5 crystallized memories from this show from 16 years ago that I wanted to see how they'd play out, and also if I was correctly remembering them. And memory number 1 was when Colt Cabana did like an arm drag and cinch, and he did a good facial expression, and I thought he was looking right at me at the time, and I was like, you are being silly. That's about it. I mean, I thought you probably cover this terrain regularly, so I'm the person retreating like these points that are fairly obvious, but I thought it was so gross when they stepped on her back to get in the ring. But she is an indentured servant or whatever, and so I guess that's her purpose.
Yeah, Matt, did you know, and both of you guys, did you notice the great commentary moment where Gabe says, manhandling Jade Chung is uncalled for, especially in a promotion called Ring of Honor? And I thought, what promotion have you been booking for 3 years? Like,
this was the moment he changed his philosophy.
I probably like this match a bit more than you guys. I thought this was just a good opener. The word I would describe this as is breezy. Like it was a match where I feel like I guess in a way it is basically what you said, Matt, where it was like kind of a WWE house show style match, and it was more lighthearted and comedy. It was definitely weird, like you said, that Colt was not angry at the guy who just nearly maimed and killed his best friend, but I thought this was the kind of match. It was just fun the whole way through. It was a nice blend of like comedy and good wrestling. I thought Colt brought out a couple spots that were interesting that you don't usually see from him, like that kind of elevated headlock that he flipped Rave up into a suplex. I liked when he was getting pinned by Rave, and then he does the bridge up and then just sits on Rave while Rave's still like on all fours for the pin. I thought that was cute and neat. He does one of those early butts, as Dave Prezak would say. It's one of those matches. It's good opener, but it's one of those openers where, like, if I was another wrestler on the show, I would also not be scared of having to top it, because they don't really do a lot of big near falls or a ton of big moves. It's not really doesn't really have high emotional stakes. It's just like, but I also thought every moment of the match was pleasantly entertaining, which there's a way to do an opener where it's like the show stealing crazy great match, and there's a way to do the opener where it's just like, oh, it's light fun and it's a nice kind of like appetizer for the show. And I thought this was more of the latter.
That said, it's not like this would be out of place. Like, I mean, the quality of the work was probably higher, but this would not be out of place on like any local indie show. You know what I mean? Like a match like this, right?
Yeah. Although I think on a local indie show, this might be more late in the card this might be like the main event rather than like the opener. Where in Ring of Honor, I think it's easier also to accept a match that's a little bit more insignificant because you're getting a lot of stuff later on the show that's much higher effort and bigger moves and all that stuff. But I also liked that during the commentary, at this point, Dave Prazak's with Gabe. CM Punk will join at different times. And Prazak asked Gabe, "Are you ready to take it to the extreme?" And Gabe's like, "Oh, I don't know if you can say that." Like, I always love when Gabe, like, acts way more scared than he should be. Like, he's going to get sued for saying, like, extreme. So after the match, Nana gets on the mic. He gets angry at Ring of Honor Soundman for playing Cult's theme, even though Cult won, so that's what you do. He tugs Jade Chung around by the arm. He tells her to go in the ring and slap Cult. Reluctantly, she does step in the ring and she does slap Colt. Colt then grabs her by the hair. He teases punching her, but then his theme music kicks in again, which that's an odd choice to start playing your theme music at that point. Colt yells at the music sound guy, gets the music to stop. He says there will be absolutely no dissing of Barry Manilow's Copacabana. He says Jade is going to get what she has coming to her. And then he begins to dance with her as the sound guy plays Let's Get It On by Marvin Gaye. She seems to enjoy the dancing. She starts to dance too until Nana just grabs her by the foot, trips her. She falls like face first, hard on the mat. He pulls her out and just drags her out of the ring to the back. And
this angle is not going to get any comfortable over the next few months, is it? Any more comfortable? Yeah. No, this is, I mean, I don't really remember this from like seeing it live, but I don't know. I guess it didn't leave an impression, but man, it leaves an impression now, and it's bad. It's just bad news. I mean, I felt even bad that, like, even though Colt, in the end was, like, not violent toward her, like, just him getting involved and putting his hands on her made me sad, that, like, Colt had to be tainted by this whole thing.
I felt the same way. Like, I knew he would never dare strike her, and they were going to have a fun little dancey dance, which I was like, wow, she's good at dancing. For the 1 second she was allowed to dance until she was face planted. But it wasn't like, I guess it's of the time and still bad when evil women get like bumped by men if you're like the truly monstrous sensational Sherry or whatever. But she didn't do anything. She is a slave or whatever, and she was ordered to strike him, and he still had to do the like grab her by the head and why I oughta roar back fist at her, and that wasn't cool.
And the other thing was, like, besides just the horrible sexism and like violence towards women, there's an element of racism involved in this too that even makes it that much worse. Nana has made some racist comments. He tells her to take her Vietnamese ass and go slap the hell out of Colt at one point. Like, just, and then like the way he like pulls her down and pulls her out of the ring. It's just awful. I mean, I get that they're being heels and like they're going to get their comeuppance, but like, it's awful.
Yeah, it'll be interesting when, like, obviously that stuff wouldn't be acceptable today. It'll be interesting when we get to the point where, like, that stuff starts to fade away, because we still haven't reached that point yet. We've been doing this for 68 episodes. So,
well, I mean, do you remember? I mean, I don't want to spoil something that's going to be talked about in 25 years, but do you remember the 2008 angle involving Bobby Dempsey and Alice in Danger?
Not real. Matt, I just forgot that Justin was on the show previously. So what do you think?
Well, just so you know, this stuff's not going away at any point that we are doing this show.
Oh boy. So next,
do you think? Do you think it would hurt for you to bend over and for a man to step on your back and put all his weight on it into the ring, or do you think it's like lying on a bed of nails where it doesn't look as uncomfortable as it really is?
I mean, I'm sure like Jimmy Rave tried to do it in a way where he was like he grabbed the ropes at the same time, like, and like did it real fast. So, but I can't imagine that it's comfortable, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure Rave tried his best not to hurt her, but I mean, I still don't think it's a good thing to do.
That really stood it was a weird difference for me between like, this is a person in the wrestling business who can take physical things and fall down, whereas stepping directly in the middle of this little lady's back was the one thing where I was like, don't do that. Don't do that.
And he does it a lot over the past few months and the next few months. He'd like it's like a lot.
Can I only say one nicer thing with regard to this whole scenario is that since I'm not on your show regularly, my perspective was more like, whoa, it's Colt Cabana, and it made me very happy to be here in 2021 that Colt Cabana is even in a really lower tier role with a regular spot on a national wrestling show. Because I was like, you are a nice and good person.
He's never stopped. He's does the Twitch now, even like which always weird. Like I've never seen Colt Cabana's Twitch, but it's weird. Like you think of the younger wrestlers doing it. I think I saw one clip once of someone like making some joke about Colt never getting laid, and him just telling someone in Twitch chat like, "Oh, fuck off." And I thought that's the fun you get up to when you're in your early 40s online.
Yeah,
but
it stuck out more because on this show are both Samoa Joe and Austin Aries, and there was that period of time in like 2015 when they started getting like regular NXT spots where I was like, just let Colt Cabana be in NXT for 6 months so he can say his WWE thing was ultimately fine and not a blight on his life.
I just tweeted last week that like if I were running AEW, I would just do something for a few months that allowed Colt Cabana to show off his personality on TV in a prominent way. Even if it wasn't long
like
term.
A Christopher Daniels type angle where it's like it's Colt Cabana's one big attempt. I think he's already done that on Dynamite before, like a long time ago, but nevertheless.
yeah, definitely. I mean, there's more to get from him, although in AEW there's so many people there. You could probably say there's more to squeeze out of like 25 people there right now.
But there's no one that I have as much affection for as Colt Cabana.
There's no more you would rather squeeze from that roster
than
Colt Cabana.
Exactly.
So next we would cut to a clip of Roderick Strong versus Alex Shelley from New Frontiers, while Gabe on voiceover announces that as a result of the Generation Next attack on that show after the match, Alex Shelley is out indefinitely. So now that Jay Lethal is back, now we're getting Alex Shelley injury updates. And then that brings us to the New York Tag Team Street Fight. The Carnage Crew of DeVito and Loke defeated the Ring Crew Express of Dunn and Marcos in 7 minutes, 34 seconds, when DeVito pinned Marcos after a spike pile driver off the second rope. Justin, this is a very violent match. I mean, had you ever seen, I imagine this was certainly not the first, as I have been reminded, not even the first Ring of Honor show you've been to, but I mean, I can't imagine like seeing many matches this violent live, even if it's something that goes semi-regularly.
Let me interject. Do you remember what that's the Carnage Crew had on the show that Justin went to in Pittsburgh against the Texas Wrestling Academy?
Man, I'm starting to forget even what we're doing right now. So
that match was extremely violent and really, really, it was actually very good. This match was one of those two things. Go ahead, Justin. Sorry.
I don't remember that 2002 match. I went to an ECW WWF house show where I think they like broke some tables or whatever, but obviously that was in a very controlled, sanitized, like fake extreme way. Yeah, I remember not having fun during this match at the time or rewatching it. I think that's about it. I spent most of the match trying to remember the name of the Marcus Malitsas or whatever. Writes for the Daily
Daily Coast guy?
Yeah. So I was mostly like, it's not the Daily Caller, that's the bad thing.
They're both bad in their own way.
So yeah, this was a New York street fight, and you boys know that in New York on the streets, that's where it really gets really, really tough.
That's where the ladders come out. The streets of New York.
Didn't like it. Is Punk on commentary yet?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to confirm because my notes are like stream of conscious, but that's where the Punk note begins. I was not having fun with the match, and I was like, well, at least CM Punk, my close friend and really famously good talker, is here doing commentary to add some color to the match. Oh, now I understand the term, color commentary. And one of the first things he did was like, with no twists, with no irony, just did the when he sits around the house, really sits around the house joke. And I was like, wow, the classic wit of our greatest wrestling words man. He also said, go back to revenge school, which I don't really understand either.
He also he must have had like his kid's joke book out, because he also said, I talked to Loke earlier on and I told him it was a little chilly outside, and Loke ran outside with a spoon. And it was like, That's like, did you read that out of like Bobby Heenan's waste paper basket?
Most of my observations here are Punk based, so I'll defer to Matt real soon. I just wondered, do you guys know how relative to when the show takes place they record the commentary for it? And I just wondered, like, has Punk already won the ROH title when he's doing the commentary for this match, being like, I swear to God I'll win that title, I swear.
I think it's very possible that he could have. I think it's different for different shows. Like, I don't think, I think, like, sometimes they'll do a bunch of shows at once. So I feel like Shane Hagedorn would probably be a better person to ask about that. But, it is definitely possible that he had already won the title and turned heel by the time he did this commentary. Yes.
Well, I thought that was cute.
If nothing else, it would, he would probably have known that he was going to have won the title, even if he hadn't wrestled the match yet. But, Matt, before I throw it to you, I have a feeling, I mean, I know this now from Justin's review, from you saying that this match was not, you basically said this match was not good. I'm going to be the high vote on this because I enjoyed this. I thought this was also good in its own way. I mean, this is about as one-sided a match you will ever see in Ring of Honor, other than a little brief run of, the Ring Crew Express offense. This is just a Carnage Crew squash. It's completely brutal, but it's a completely different kind of match than everything else on the show, and I like variety, and it is a crazy spectacle. Like, Dunn and Marcos both blade. Marcos blade, like, bleeds a lot. There are some really brutal spots here. One of the Ring Crew Express, they get hit. Dunn takes what looks like a wooden chair. Like, there's a chair made out of wood that splinters away, which seemed crazy. I mean, the Carnage Crew pour Jack Daniels and cuts, but really the biggest crazy spots on this are both with ladders, where Dunn and Marcos do the Carnage Crew are getting a ladder outside the ring, and Dunn and Marcos do like a double dive onto them while they're holding the ladder. And then late in the match, Dunn and Marcos are on opposite corners of the ring. They're going to do like double dives, and Dunn gets thrown off the top rope onto a ladder that was suspended on the apron and on the barricade, and he just bounces off the ladder, and it just horrific. But I can see why people might not like this, because again, it was very one-sided and very brutal and just and probably not safe, but I liked it as a spectacle, and maybe secretly I did kind of like the little chili line from CM Punk. But Matt, before I throw it to you, I just want to say there was one chant during this match I did not recognize first. I thought, is that a "Your CD Sucks" chant? I thought, what is that? And then afterwards, I read in the notes from Derek Bergen's live review that apparently Loke was giving out CDs of a band Loke is in to everybody at the start of the show. But from what I understand, Matt, you and Justin did not get free Loke CDs.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely did not get a CD that I can recall. I'm pretty sure actually that I had the same process as you of like, what is that chant all about? Then reading Derek Bergen's recap at the time and being like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I mean, keep in mind at the time I didn't even know who Loke was, like the Carnage Crew were two guys, Dunn and Marcos were two guys. Like, that's how little ROH I'd watched. I just watched some of the famous hype matches with Samoa Joe, CM Punk, I knew Danielson, Hobbs. I knew those guys, but I didn't know like the undercard guys pretty much at all. So this was like, okay, I would have no idea that they had CDs or anything like that.
I did end up with a Loke CD from that trip, but I paid, I think, $36 for a Tone Loke CD in Times Square.
I mean, there is a thing in New York where people will try to come up to you and like just be like, "Hey, I got my new CD. Buy it. Here's the CD. Put it in your hand. Give me the money for it now." Like,
come to my trunk.
That's a thing that happens. But as far as the match, I mean, I did not think it was like bad per se. Like, this match actually got a really bad rap at the time, and I remember definitely thinking it was very uncomfortable to watch. I just didn't think it was like good either. There were definitely some big bumps. But it was just like this match was pretty much put here to be the extreme match on the card, since that was the theme of the weekend. But it just didn't feel like this is what the audience wanted to see.
And the audience was you and me, so you're right.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, and these two teams actually could have had a good, like, back and forth hardcore match. I think like a pretty good one. And they did have a better one later on down the line, maybe not quite as brutal as this, but this I think was just a little too one-sided for me. But I totally agree with you that some of those bumps were really good. It really was though like a squash match, which Dunn and Marcos had just had a tag team title match the week before. So that's surprising to watch in context. And then Dunn and Marcos, they get one big spot where they splash the ladder, knocking down both of the Carnage crew, and then get like a little bit of offense in before, that spot that you were talking about where Dunn just bumps off the ladder real hard. I will say this. I loved all of CM Punk's dad jokes, and I want to hear more of them. But yeah, no, I don't think it was a bad match. But I would not call it good.
So, and CM Punk is now a dad to that friggin' dog or whatever.
I was going to say, for a second, I was thinking, oh, God, is my memory that bad? Did CM Punk have a kid? And they said, oh, to that dog. I thought, oh, thank God.
Justin must not like that dog. He called it freaking.
Well, if I remember correctly, that is a very ugly dog.
Yeah.
But
I can't believe you're saying those things.
No offense to CM Punk.
I take no part in this insulting of this little dog.
Oh, what if CM Punk shoots on Through the Years podcast?
So after the match, that's when DeVito, like I said earlier, that's when he pours the Jack Daniels onto Marcos' cut, because the Carnage Crew's new thing seems to be to come out drinking Jack Daniels and having commentary talk about how they're better now that they've gained weight again and gotten fat again, which living the dream. At that point,
that's what Jericho said when he went to New Japan, right?
Chris Jericho really is a modern Carnage Crew gimmick. Just swap samosas for Jack, and everything else stays the same. But
I became fat on purpose to be good.
Oh God, that was amazing! Like a year or two ago, where like briefly, like Jericho gained a bunch of weight, and Dave Meltzer was like, "Yeah, he wants to be like more of a Brody style. Like he wants to be heavier." Then like Jericho, within like a couple of weeks, I think had lost some of that weight. And it was like, well, apparently maybe he didn't. I don't know.
This is a real Mac from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, that one season situation.
There's a lot of stories about people during the pandemic who wanted to become more like Bruiser Brody to protect themselves from all the unrest going on in society and decided to become fat. Can I say one more silly thing? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Justin's apologizing for being himself, and I don't like it.
Yeah, for bringing the funny.
This goes all the way back to the really important CD point, but the chant they did was like, your CD sucks, right? Once you deciphered it,
yes.
The 4-syllable one,
yes.
Your CD. So in 2 months is when John Cena will really famously get the crowd to turn on him when he wrestles Jericho at SummerSlam. So really the way to do that chant is, your CD sucks. Right? That would fit a lot better.
Right. Good point,
Cena's
Justin.
CD received again? Like, was it... Because, like, wasn't... Like, I remember, like, maybe I'm crazy, and this is another tangent, but, like, wasn't it almost like a grudging, like, it's not that bad, actually? Like, even from people, like it's not a good rap album, but it's not... It's not Bret Hart on the wrestling album singing a ballad. Like it was more passable than that.
It was better than Be a Man Hulk. My memory is the first one that was like the A-Team one. People were like, oh, that was kind of tight, John Cena. But then before SummerSlam, he did the one that was like a more ballady, sensitive one that was like, I'm just a kid, and here is some home video footage of my really expensive house I grew up in the Massachusetts suburbs. And then people were like, okay, just because your friend is called the trademark doesn't mean that you guys didn't have a really good upbringing.
I do remember that, but I remember also when Cena's new music, debuted right around this time, the one that he's most famous for. I was kind of bummed that Basic Thugonomics was gone, but, looking back, that music is like, the best, Justin, you've been to a lot of WWE live events. Is there any music that has come on in the past, let's say 15 years in WWE that gets you amped, like hearing the beginning notes of Cena's theme?
That is, and it'll be coming back soon. Or will the Thunderdome? I forget when they're going to crowds. Yeah, I think when John Cena. Oh, that's time for Cena's like alleged comeback to TV. Will be for fans for when they, because there's multiple like iconic things with Steve Austin's thing. It's just a glass thing, but Cena has like the descending notes and then Brr Abadoo. So that's all the stuff to get you pumped up, and then go into the actual beat of the thing. So you're right, Matt. That's I 100% agree. But I liked so many distinctive like real life songs that went on the show where this crowd liked the incredibly like dorky James Gibson music and some of the Rapping Man songs for Samoa Joe, etc., and CM Punk's really distinct music. And then at other times they like the incredibly silly Bryan Danielson song. So what a wide palette for the Ring of Honor fan base.
Definitely. I mean, if we learned anything, wrestling can make you like a lot of music. It could even make you like Limp Bizkit. So
I never got there. I'm the only one that just I can't make it happen for myself.
My Way, great cut. Come on, Matt.
Nope.
It's like Kid Rock says, you know, if it hits.
I did kind of get into That Lonely Road of Faith. I have to admit.
You were always more of a fan of Crack Addict. You're a fan of cracking skulls when people start static. But we at this point on the show, we cut to another clip from WB11, which I only mentioned because it's kind of incredible. Lacey is actually wrestling in this ring with Julie Chen. Julie Chen at this point then hugs Lacey and goes, "Oh, I think I win." And Lacey kind of gives that "I'm a heel, but I'll kind of grin" thing. And I just wrote my notes: Julie Chang, the original Bailey, because she was definitely a hugger in this segment.
My notes say friendship.
Next up was the six-way mayhem. Azrael defeated BJ Whitmer, Deranged, Fast Eddie, Izzy, and Jack Evans at 8 minutes, 17 seconds when he pinned Izzy after a top rope double stomp. This is the third straight match on the show that was under 10 minutes that I thought was very stylistically different, that I felt like did kind of exactly what it needed to do. I thought this was good too. Like, I thought you had kind of a breezy, fun comedy opener, then you had like a crazy ECW kind of hardcore tribute, and then you had this is your crazy, wild, like scramble spot fest, and they don't reinvent the wheel. It's just crazy spots, but I felt like it was a good version of that, and like a lot of the good scramble type matches, it doesn't overstay its welcome at all. I mean, it's only 8 minutes for 6 guys, but I also thought in those 8 minutes they did a good job kind of making sure that everyone almost got like an equal spot to shine in this match. Other than BJ Whitmer, who I thought played his role really well as like the big guy who did what you want a big guy to do in a match like that, which is like toss guys around, and he hit like a really cool like spinning pyramid sit out power bomb, like just this really cool cross arm power bomb. Like everyone else in this match basically was like the best regular high flyers Ring of Honor had access to at this point in their history. Like the only guy you could say you could swap in would be, I think if you swapped in BJ for Matt Sydal, you'd have like the top 6 high flyers Ring of Honor had access to at this point. And yeah, just a lot of, crazy spots, the usual, you got your dives and, some sloppy stuff too. But in a scramble type match, I think you accept it better. And, Punk again on commentary, a couple highlights. He said, I believe he called Jack Evans Corkscrew Schultz, which was a good nickname. And Matt, I love that Punk, he calls BJ Whitmer. Still, we've got so little Punk on commentary left, but he's along with us one of the 3 people that will not let go of Gabe calling BJ Whitmer a horse, because he even goes, that Clydesdale. He's not a Clydesdale like BJ Whitmer. So I continue to enjoy that. Matt, what did you think about this?
Yeah, I thought this was pretty great for what it was. They don't at this point in ROH, the point that we're reviewing, they don't do these like scramble and 6-man mayhem type matches as often. I think the last one was on the trios tournament show, right? And this, I think, is one of the better ones they'd ever done. Like, just it was short. Like, it was like 8 minutes. But I don't even think there was really that much in the way of sloppiness. Like, I think there was just like a lot of really cool moves that were very well timed, and it was just like boom, 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 and it was, it's pretty much. That's right. It's pretty much exactly what you would want this match to be. Like, I can't think of anything that I would say this should have been different. There was something after the match that I thought should be different, which I'll get to. But like right at the beginning, and you know how much I love Deranged, but like. During his entrance, he was coming to the ring. He has a cell phone.
Okay, I have this written down.
Yeah, he's like, I want to buy 6,000 shares of Doritos, and then he tells a fan, "I'm on the phone. Be quiet," which is just a very fun thing to say when you're walking to the ring.
With music playing.
That's right. Loud music. I also noticed that Jack Evans was slapping hands on the way to the ring, so I was like, have Generation X officially turned face without doing a face turn? I'm still not clear even after watching this whole show, but
I've given up trying to figure that out.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. If there was, well, I'm gonna notice after the next show, I guess. But if there was a line of demarcation of Generation Next are just suddenly baby faces now, this might have been the one show, because they were definitely heels on the last show, and the show before that. So. But yeah, so Deranged wrestles in his full dress shirt and tie, which is fun. Let's take a look at some of these moves. So Fast Eddie hits a tombstone on Deranged, and then BJ Whitmer comes in, does suplexes on Eddie and Evans, then a spine buster to Deranged. Then he rolls through an Azrael crossbody into a delayed brain buster. So he's just like busting out the big moves. So Deranged took a tombstone and a spine buster, so you'd think he should be out, but he's really not for very long. But Izzy suddenly jumps in the ring, does a reverse Rana on Whitmer, which is actually very well done. Then the Lacey's Angels come in, they do a Code Red neckbreaker combination on Eddie, and Punk says, "That's such a devastating maneuver that I would be shocked if Fast Eddie can now somehow see." Because, you see, Justin, Fast Eddie is legally blind, and the commentators like to talk about that constantly when he's wrestling. And then there's a bunch of dives.
He got blind to go to Japan and be like Stan Hansen.
That's right. That's a good one. It's just actually clever on so many levels, Justin. And, I actually wrote at one point, should I really complain about the lack of selling here? And I mean, I shouldn't, right? That's just not the point of this match. Like, they're not supposed to sell anything, right? Yeah. But one of my also favorite crowd moments is everyone's doing dives and they like do chants for the next guy to do a dive. And then after everyone does them, they start chanting for Nana to do a dive. And he starts looking at the crowd all shocked, like, what, me? Because Nana's reactions are awesome. Then suddenly Whitmer and Fast Eddie have a chop battle, which you wouldn't expect Fast Eddie to be involved in a chop battle with BJ Whitmer, right? Like, that's not really his deal. But Eddie hits a high angle Russian leg sweep, which I feel like he's the only guy who does that move, where it's like a Russian leg sweep driver almost, where he like does a Russian leg sweep, but the guy lands on the back of his neck. And Evans gets a near fall with a corkscrew on Eddie. Then Izzy comes in, does a moonsault dropkick, sending Evans to the floor. Azrael blocks a Rana by Izzy, drops him into the electric chair. Then Deranged comes in and hits a snapmare driver on Azrael, which is now my new favorite move. I think that's such a cool move. I hope someone else does that move. Just such a good move. Then Whitmer hits some moves, and then in a really awesome spot, Evans is on the apron. Whitmer goes to spear him off, but Evans moves, causing Whitmer to just do a dive onto Fast Eddie. Then Evans follows up with a space-flying tiger drop onto both of them, and the crowd just goes absolutely ballistic. Like, that was such a well-timed, cool spot. Like, I feel like if this match just had that spot, I would really like it. But that was on top of all the other shit I just said. Then Izzy misses a baseball slide with Azrael in the Tree of Woe, but Azrael moves and hits a top rope double stomp to the back of Izzy's head and gets the pin on Izzy. So here's my complaint about this match. So this is really, I mean, I didn't know this when I first saw it, but this is really Azrael's first big win in ROH. Yeah. And, like, clearly they're going to try over the next few months to do a little bit more with him. and they just cut away immediately. And I don't know if you agree with me on this, but I've really come to firmly believe this. If you want to push a guy and give him momentum, like the lingering on the victory and like the putting the guy over after a victory is probably more important than the victory itself. Like if a guy wins a bunch of matches and you immediately move on and forget about them, they don't mean anything. If a guy wins a bunch of matches and you like talk about it and like see him celebrating and reveling in the crowd reaction and like getting more popular, that's what gets a guy over, not just like, okay, he won, bye. I know, am I crazy here?
No, this is again, not to make this about AEW, but like a common complaint about them too is like when you pack things so tight, like it's important to like the result isn't the only important thing. Especially like when a guy has a big win, you want to celebrate with them kind of. It reminds me of like what was the one a few weeks ago or whatever where they did the end of that like they did the whole storyline of, if Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian lose, they're going to they're going to never be able to team again, and they set up this whole winning streak, and then their team loses, and like they cut away to a backstage segment immediately. Like you don't get to like any like emotional payoff or commiseration. It's just like, well, the stipulation has been executed, it's done, and then maybe tune into being the Elite on YouTube next week and maybe you'll see something. I don't know. And yeah, exactly. I feel, like if it's just a win and then immediately goes on to the next thing, it doesn't seem special. Like I don't think after every single match you want something lingering, but after anything that you want to be really to hit home, you should have at least a minute or two of like focus and the announcers talking about it. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I would say probably after every single match, you do want to linger on it for more than like literally a tenth of a second, right?
Yes.
Like, because that's really what all this was. Yeah, it was a TNA thing too, where they would be like to the back. Remember?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Alvarez turned that into one of the early wrestling memes, pretty much.
That's right.
People got to bring it back in a big way when they cut away from the LAX thing.
Yep.
Or excuse me, the SCU.
So, Justin, how about all those moves? There was a lot of moves.
It's funny you say that, and in the context of Matt's review, is I think when we went back to Matt's home, he was reading me reviews of this show, and like this on the message board, and then someone's star rating for this match was like 4 1/4 stars, and I was like, Matt, come on now, how can that be? Yeah, most of my observations were about Deranged's phone call. Why would he try and make that call then? Like, it's such an inopportune time for what seemed like an important deal. Why was he dressed like that? I really felt like he seemed someone who should have been named Fast Eddie, because someone named Fast Eddie would be like making deals and things like that.
Yeah, do you want someone that's legally blind to be fast ever? Like that seems like that would work against you.
What other good things to say here are?
Did you like the match, Justin? It would be a question that I would have.
I zoned out. Yeah, I like the moves you mentioned, yes, but it all went back to that 4 1/4 star thing. I was like, well, they are doing some cool moves. This is me having an internal debate with myself that I just lost. Okay. Basically, my thoughts were, so, like, congratulations to Israel that he won this match, and, like, Israel has every right to defend himself in the match.
No. Justin, we're cutting it off.
The asymmetrical aggression that he displayed, and really the callousness for the well-being of everybody else in the match, and the fact that the commentators mostly condoned it was, I thought, really...
the end of the show.
Boy, if Prince Nana ever lost, like, his client loses, he must leave Ring of Honor, do you think the fans would chant, Nana, Nana, hey, hey, goodbye?
Yes. It's my one-word answer.
So, yeah, 4 1/4 sounds good.
So,
well, was that worth the end of the show at Trevor? Was that worth our show being gone forever?
I mean, one of us will probably be found in a shallow grave, but it's still worth. I mean, I was kind of looking forward to that anyway, so it's kind of like killing 2 birds with 1 stone.
Or two hosts.
So, Matt, you said you had something to talk about after this. Is it the
No,
next
that
segment,
was
or
that
is
was
it
it. That was it. Just the complaint about cutting away from Azrael too quickly.
Okay, good, because I just wanted to make sure I didn't
Azrael
in Palestine. We get another clip from WB11. This is Julie Chang is now in the outdoor ring watching Azrael and Austin Aries wrestle as Eye of the Tiger plays in the background, because of course it's a morning news segment about wrestling, so they're going to play something like Eye of the Tiger. And then I just she's it's such a weird segment because she is in the ring like just a foot or two away from these guys who are trying to do like a serious like little spot of indie ROH work rate wrestling, and she's just commenting out. She goes, "Look how red his chest is," she says after like a chop. It's just like it's like if your mom was in the ring watching you like wrestle, like don't hit him too hard. Like it's got that kind of energy. It's a very unique segment.
That's Art Donachan commentary.
So next is the big segment. This is Derek Dempsey in his debut. He's from the second Ring of Honor training class, I believe. This was his debut, and what a debut, versus the masked Boston superstar, who I assume is Loke or possibly DeVito. That goes to a no contest in 20 seconds. Gabe calls these two guys two hot prospects, and basically, these two go into a headlock, and at this point, Shane Douglas's music hits, and out comes the man himself. Shane attacks both guys. He lays out the masked Boston superstar with a belly-to-belly suplex. Shane Hagedorn told me a few hours ago that he said that apparently he was supposed to be one of the people getting, I guess, tossed around by Shane Douglas.
Franchised.
Yeah, exactly. It was supposed to be some hot Shane-on-Shane violence, but I guess the Ring of Honor booked this show at the last second, I guess, to take advantage of the ECW kind of weekend with the Hardcore Homecoming and One Night Stand. And so because of that, I guess Shane and some of the other Ring of Honor students like Davey Andrews had already booked a show for a different indie in, I believe, Massachusetts. So instead, he couldn't have get this spot. So that's a little trivia note for you. But anyway, Shane Douglas gets on the mic. He gets a good pop. And at this point, Shane Douglas says, rumors are there's a little independent promoter down the road trying to have a reunion show. Crowd boos this. Shane says, trying to have an ECW reunion show without the franchise is like a bull with no horns and no balls. And at this point, the crowd cheers. They're into Shane Douglas. And then at this point, it takes a turn because Shane then says he was invited to go to that show, and he told them they could kiss his franchise ass. And before he even can finish that sentence, the crowd audibly turns on him. The immediately chants start of "You're a liar." Shane at this point, instead of acknowledging it, sheepishly going, "Okay, I wasn't invited," he just pushes through with his pre-planned promo. At that point, he says, I had a choice to go to the WWE ECW show or the Ring of Honor, and I chose Ring of Honor. Some people applaud, but you can definitely tell people are still turning against him. At this point, Shane talks about buzzing with adrenaline in his hotel room while he watched the Forever Hardcore DVD documentary. But the fans are just turned on him. They're chanting, "We want Flair." They're wooing. Douglas at this point asks, is Ric Flair still alive? Shane then says he went on the Ring of Honor website and saw Gabe Sapolsky say he wants to do ECW, that Ring of Honor is the new ECW. Shane says, what did the fans say? Shane asked the fans, what do you guys say? The fans all boo Shane Douglas. Shane then at that point says, from what I've seen, Ring of Honor isn't worth the sweat on my balls. He starts putting himself over. He gets some more cheers when he starts putting himself over in kind of like regular promo mode, but he gets more boos, and a loud "fuck you, Shane" chant follows. Shane says we're less than 48 hours from him giving the fans what they wanted at a Hardcore Homecoming, and they treat him like this, they should be kissing his ass. Shane says the next time you need someone to save the sport, it isn't going to be Gabe Sapolsky, and don't look to the franchise for help. He says, Ring of Honor is the same as WWE, and everyone here is a fucking moron. The crowd launches into a loud "Don't come back" chant. So this is an infamous promo. This is, Matt, during the show we've covered, things that did not make the official ROH DVDs, but were on the ROH Uncensored DVD, like Insane Clown Posse doing a match and getting turned on immediately, Conan doing a match and getting turned on immediately. Obviously, the one we did get to cover that was on a Ring of Honor show proper, Jeff Hardy coming on, and half the crowd being women that came just to the show screaming for him, and half the crowd resenting that women showed up at a Ring of Honor show and berating them and Jeff Hardy. This one is interesting because I remember this just as the crowd hating Shane Douglas immediately, but when rewatching it, this crowd was totally into Shane Douglas until very clearly he said, I had a choice to go to the one night stand or here, and I chose here. And this crowd clearly knew that, that was complete bullshit, that ECW one night stand, Shane Douglas, and a bunch of the wrestlers who did Hardcore Homecoming were not allowed because they were TNA employees and WWE wasn't going to use them or try and arrange to get permission to use them. And it's crazy because there was, even after that, even when they turned on him, when he kind of revved up into like Shane Douglas promo voice and was just like, I'm the franchise, you would still hear some fans cheer him, but like he just kind of stuck with what he was going to do. And you could see him get uncomfortable, kind of maybe even fumble with his words a little bit. And it's funny for a guy that was so known, he was kind of, one of his bread and butter was his promos. And he just handled this so poorly. And the crowd turned on him so completely. And he misread the room so badly. It is captivating, but also insanely uncomfortable. But I guess, Matt, before I throw it to you, Justin, as the guest, I should throw it to you. What do you feel about Shane Douglas? I mean, you're from Pittsburgh. He's, this guy, he's your only hero. What did you feel like live? Like, did you feel he was letting you down, Matt? Sidney Crosby, Shane Douglas, the two pillars of Pittsburgh, and here he is here, just completely losing the crowd.
Yes, I think the lottery that let the Penguins draft Crosby would come just a month later. So Sid was not at the table when Shane and I were at Permane Brothers restaurant along the Monongahela River. And
Sid was just a kid still.
Yeah, and you and him have the same birthday.
Yes, we do. Unfortunately, it's depressing for me.
So me and Shane were down there, and we were like, "Hey, what's this big New York City thing going on with the Ring of Honor? What's this promotion like? You want to like?"
Justin, please talk like that the whole time.
Oh, like. You and me hop in the car. We're going to drive down there to New York. I'm going to stay with Matt, and then you can do the show. And then we'll meet up at the venue. And so Shane comes out. I was like, oh, Shane, you're here. Good. We have a third seat. We've been waiting for you. And then Shane gets pissed. And I'm like, Shane, no. I'm doing that, like, cut off, throat sign. It's not going well. I was confused because the way this is laid out, Shane has a second appearance at the where he comes out again later, spoilers for this podcast. So it's like it's set up for him to heel on the crowd and then come out and like change his mind and be like, oh, I thought about it and Ring of Honor is actually tough and cool. So I wonder if like he was supposed to pull the rug out from the crowd, but they beat him to it and we're like, shut up, you're a liar. So, yes, I don't know if, like, a naturally truthful person like Shane has explained this in a shoot interview. That seems like the kind of research that you would have already done for us if it had happened. So I am quite confused. I do have solidarity with everyone from Pittsburgh, myself and Dr. Baker, of course, to the renowned pro wrestling minds. I'm a natural empath, guys, so I was very uncomfortable during this because I thought it was a laughable thing too, because it's like, it's so funny because he's saying it to us, the people there with him, like, because we're all cool. I came here instead of the rich place. And we're like, no, you didn't. That's so much better than here. Clearly. Because like, he, not just because he was under a TNA contract did they not use him at One Night Stand, but also I think because he is Shane Douglas. So, like, there was a thing, like, Raven was also under a TNA contract, and I think they were like, well, Paul wants to make a deal to use Raven on One Night Stand. And Terry Funk, like, didn't do the first One Night Stand, and he came to the second one. The first one was like, I'm going to be loyal to the truth. But with Shane, it was like, yeah, man, okay. So, but based on the thing, like, thought it was supposed to call back to him. Well, that's later when he comes out with the pure title, where it's like he's going to throw down the pure title like he did famously, but instead he embraces it and respects it. So I really don't know what the psychology here was, but not reading the ballroom that we were in, as you put it, is pretty much what went down there. And then I come back 4 years later, and I'm also very uncomfortable when Jim Cornette makes a surprise appearance at that show. But from what I remember on then, it was like most people were with him because he wasn't Jim Cornette yet. And one single drunk man in the crowd was loudly catcalling his promo and saying, "Shut the fuck up, we want wrestling." And I was, again, a natural empath being like, I'm uncomfortable. But that was my experience. Yeah. And then so on the drive back with Shane to Pittsburgh after the show, I think I left on Monday, and he hopped in, and I was like, "What happened, man?" And he was like, "Oof, I'm quick on my feet, but they caught the old franchise nap."
Matt, before I give it to you, I do have a couple of notes, and maybe this will give you some more to bounce off. First off, PW Insider, they kind of wrote, like they wrote at the time that Ring of Honor was, this was part of one of the selling points of them promoting the show, obviously, along with the, hey, if you're in town to see One Night Stand, you can see us in the afternoon first, and we're only a few blocks away. But PW Insider wrote, Ring of Honor announced this evening that they have, quote, agreed and given Douglas the platform to speak on June 12th. Douglas says this will be a promo that every ECW fan needs to hear, which, for reading this after I had rewatched the promo, I was like, oh boy. Then the PW Torch wrote, the reaction was a surprise, as he was expected to be greeted with cheers since it was a, quote, feel-good weekend for ECW reunions. And again, I'll say, if you watch it, he was greeted with cheers until he said a really stupid, obviously not true thing. For people that, I think people sometimes remember this as just another example of those smart mark fans turn on an old vet. But, no, they gave him a chance. They liked him. He could have easily have gotten through this okay. But finally, Matt, before I throw it to you, going to what Justin said, and I want to get your opinion on this, Matt, because I don't even know if I believe this, but the Observer wrote, the idea with the Shane Douglas thing was to start as a face, say he's unimpressed with Ring of Honor, and then at the end, admit he was impressed. They're saying that the idea always was for Douglas to kind of shit on Ring of Honor, and then at the end be like, Ring of Honor's actually pretty cool, guys. But, part of me that's cynical, and I can be cynical, is thinking that's just them trying to cover just how badly he got shit on. It didn't turn out good, but that was kind of the plan, was for the crowd. Because, let's say this. If it was the plan for him to turn on Ring of Honor, the crowd turns on him before he ever gets to the part of his promo that turns on Ring of Honor. So instead it just comes off as him, going, well, if you're going to shit on me, I'll shit on Ring of Honor, because he hasn't even gotten to that point where they're like, fuck you, you're a liar, woo, Ric Flair. But Matt, what did you think of this? This is a crazy moment. Probably the thing, unfortunately, that this show is most remembered for.
I definitely thought that it was the plan, for him to turn on Ring of Honor. That was the sense that I got. That's what the if he really went on heel by himself, I don't know. I don't think he would have done that. I don't think Gabe would have been like, yeah, just do whatever you want, react to whatever the crowd does. That just didn't seem like the way ROH ran. I think if the plan was for him to come out after Samoa Joe's match, compliment Samoa Joe, all that stuff, I think that was all true. But obviously, yeah, what happened was the crowd just beat him to the punch. That's how I felt about it. I will say this. I didn't think before, so you're right. I totally agree that the crowd turned on him when he made that comment about being invited to One Night Stand and choosing to come to ROH instead. And first of all, I don't know if you noticed, one guy in the crowd yelled, "You could have done both." I don't think they were so excited to have him out before that. I think they politely applauded him, but I don't remember anybody, I don't remember the reaction being like, oh yes, Shane Douglas, we're so excited for him to be there. That said, me personally, I've never had any problem with Shane Douglas. I thought he was, good at times in ECW. I thought he was a very important part of their time there. Yes, after that, didn't do that much, but I liked his, I liked some of the stuff he did in WCW. I think that good wrestler and definitely became a good promo. So I have nothing against Shane Douglas. I do think it's weird that the crowd was so mad at him for that obvious lie when Dusty Rhodes did the same lie the weekend of WrestleMania 20 when he was at ROH in Elizabeth, and he said, Vince McMahon said, come to WrestleMania, and I was like, no, I'm going to ROH, which, I think that was the night of the Hall of Fame, so probably that at least made a little bit of sense. Or maybe the Hall of Fame is on Friday. I don't even know. But I remember Dusty doing that, and the crowd just went along with it. Like, yeah. And this crowd definitely didn't. And I don't know if that's because it was more plausible that Dusty would have invited to WrestleMania, or just because it's Dusty Rhodes and we're not going to boo Dusty Rhodes ever for any reason. I don't know which it was. But, I definitely remember watching this and feeling like it was a bit of a Curb Your Enthusiasm type of vibe where it's just like you're cringing so hard because, I don't know, I never like it when the crowd just destroys somebody, even when I do sort of agree with them, and this time I didn't feel as strongly as they did. So I definitely did not enjoy watching the segment either then or now.
Do you remember the cornet one?
I don't remember it going wrong. But
I'm literally thinking of one man, so that's why it's not really that comparable
Gotcha.
than my shared experience.
Gotcha.
But he was so loud because everyone else was listening to him. He was from the future.
Well, the future is now, Justin.
Wow, that's so confusing. That's really false advertising. Because, if the future was then, why are we talking about it now?
No, I think it's sort of like you have to continually say it. Like the future is now. No, now. The future is now. The future is now. Like that.
This is a podcast that will repeatedly and perpetually re-download in your player, so the future will always be when we're talking about it now.
Right.
No. If I could break the tie, I have to think it was planned and they beat him to the punch. It was, like those Alexa Bliss interviews she would do when she was champion, where she'd be like, oh my God, it's my dream to win this title. And I'm so honored to be here in front of all of you because I'm so happy to tell you that you suck. And so I think Shane is supposed to come out and be like, you're the coolest fans and this is a good wrestling thing. Not. And then we all go, no, how dare you? But we got him. Nice try. You can't French fries us.
So next up would be Homicide with Julius Smokes defeating James Gibson via pinfall in 21 minutes, 13 seconds after he hits a low blow and then a lariat. Matt, a first time meeting for these two, at least in Ring of Honor, I believe. Hopefully my memory is at least that good. What'd you think about this? Two of the big names for this year in Ring of Honor.
Well, Confederate flag in New York City and Confederate trunks, both this time. He's got the double whammy, and the crowd did not seem to mind. But Homicide did have a Puerto Rican flag, and he was supposed to be the heel somehow. I don't get it. But
and isn't that so confusing? Because Nydia is from Puerto Rico.
Yeah, the Confederate flag, man. Another thing I'm just not going to get used to seeing at this point.
Well, speaking well of your native New York, Matt, did you notice at one point though where there was a point in the match where Smokes grabbed the flag and the Confederate flag and he tried to cool off Homicide with it, and you could hear some fans at that point chant "Burn that shit." And I thought, finally, a Ring of Honor crowd that is not into the Confederate flag.
I missed that actually, but I want to go back and watch it now because
there is a "Burn that shit" chant briefly for that moment.
Makes me proud. But yeah. Wrestling's weird that was acceptable. But
you today get so many culture war segments out of and these fans cheered the burning of the Confederate flag or tried to get it to happen. That's not good.
Justin, after your Palestine stuff, we're not even going to politics with you.
I never said Palestine. I was talking about the wrestler Azrael.
Well, that reminds me of the story that just came after the New Jack's death, where they were saying that New Jack during the Smoky Mountain days, like he before one show, like Tracy Smothers apparently, because again, this is a different time apparently, in the crazy days of the 1990s, where Tracy Smothers was selling Confederate flags before shows, and then one day New Jack says like, "Can I have one of these for the show?" And he like during the show rubs his ass on it and all that stuff, and then they end up selling. Tracy Smothers ended up selling apparently a ton of Confederate flags to the point where he cut a deal with New Jack to like do that every night, and they just sold a ton of Confederate flags. So that it's great how wrestling brings people together, to sell Confederate flags.
Okay. That's the first I heard that story, and it's very uncomfortable.
But I mean, that's the crazy about wrestling. It's a black man and a white man working together to fool the fans into buying a celebration of hate and splitting the proceeds. That is the most pro wrestling story maybe in history.
I cannot deny that you are correct about this. As far as the match, so if you remember from the previous show, Gibson was like, after I lost the title matches twice, it's going to be no more Mr. Nice Guy. So the whole idea of this match was that he was going to get more aggressive. And I got to say that as far as the match itself, like the aggressiveness was pretty mellow. Like he did a lot of like choking against the ropes, but it wasn't like it was a super hard hitting. He did most of his regular wrestling stuff. It was really after the match that he sort of pulled out this like Gibson snapped sort of thing. But the match itself was very slow. In my opinion, too slow. Like it was just like it just never really got into any sort of special gear. I mean, these are, like you said, two of the best wrestlers in the company, and the match was just continued at this very slow pace the whole time. The last few minutes were pretty good. They got into more near falls and stuff, things. But, like, it was really late in the match when I felt that it picked up. The execution was good. I wouldn't say this was... I'd say this was a good match. Like, 3 stars, 3.25 stars maybe. But, like, these two wrestlers are great. And I would say this might have ended up being, to me, one of Gibson's most disappointing matches in the company, just because it was so much less entertaining than it could have been. Like, there was nothing wrong with any of the execution. Gibson's execution is always great. But I just didn't feel like it ever got exciting. But there were dueling chants at certain points. The crowd wasn't quiet for the whole thing. They weren't as loud as they were for some of the previous matches, though. But a couple of other things I noticed. At one point early in the match, Punk said that Gibson was from the part of the South where they teach kids at school that the South won the war. And I was like, well, at least someone is acknowledging this whole weirdness about the Confederate flag. But then also at one point, Prazak refers to it as the, quote, rebel flag, which is, I feel like well, I don't know. It's the Confederate flag. But
they were definitely rebelling against something. Maybe we should just mention what it was.
Well, no.
Like, not a good thing.
In the South, that is like what a lot of people call it, right? So I don't want to insult our Southern listeners, but I don't feel too bad insulting the Confederate flag. Hate me if you will. But
look, we're only going to get killed by Israel and Palestine. So
all right. Let's just stop talking about that at all.
I misspoke. When I referred to the PLO, I meant LOP, the Wrestling Aggregator site, Lords of Pain.
We're gonna die.
Well, we're gonna. I feel like you don't have to worry about us getting killed, Trevor, but we will be canceled. And that's worse.
Self-loathing Jews.
So there was a USA chant at one point, and I was wondering who that was targeted at, because West Virginia is America, and Puerto Rico is also America. So what is this USA chant toward? I don't know. But anyway, that's my thought of the match.
Justin, before I get your thoughts, I just want to clear up. Justin and Matt are both Jewish. I'm not. So if you're going to hurt anyone, hurt me because I laughed and I don't have a right to laugh at it.
God.
So I'll take all. I'll take all the blame here. So, Justin, what do you think about the match?
I don't like where any of this is going.
I'll be nice and normal. That guy was so scary.
Well, I was going to say something. Never mind. Go
Yes,
ahead.
please.
No,
I was trying to be nice and good.
being Jewish and Israel are not the same thing, and I don't want that anyway. But
yeah, I don't. No, you're right. I don't want to conflate the two or anything like that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, you weren't. That's just a larger thing where it's like, why don't they all go there where they will be happy? Yeah,
we're having our own
really,
Shane Douglas promo moment.
I mean, he sure did dive in the crowd. He gave him a warning. He said, "You better move." But that is one of my 5 indelible memories of the show, when it was just as scary watching it again. Because I was like, Matt, can he do that? Can he jump on us? I didn't want to fight any of the wrestlers, and I can't catch him. I'm not strong.
Yeah.
Did you like the match, Justin?
Like, I'm fairly numb based on watching Dynamite every week, and the way like people can kind of have a 4-star match in their sleep now just by doing the big moves and kicking out of them, that nothing really moves me anymore. But so everything on this show, I was like, that was nice. It was fun to see this man back then, but it was especially strange for Noble Gibson, who is in this like weird little interregnum period. He was kind of used okay at times in his WWE runs, but when they bookend this thing where he was like treated as a world title level guy, it made me kind of like feel bad for him. But sure, he went back fairly soon, I think, by the end of this summer.
I will say this: his run in ROH was like fantastic. Like the stuff of legends, like he was great in ROH and had lots of really great matches. And this, in my opinion, wasn't one of them.
Mm-hmm. But that's about it. Do people dive in the crowd like that a lot? It seems like so dangerous.
It feels like lately they've been doing it more. Wouldn't you say, Matt? Like even the show we just covered had a match between Alex Shelley and Roderick Strong, where Alex Shelley threw Roderick Strong, I believe, 4 times in the front row, and each time he didn't like even tell the fans to get out of the way. Like he just tossed them in. There's
plenty of diving into the crowd in ROH for sure. And once Danielson becomes champion, it becomes one of his signature spots.
But I feel like in the earlier days there was more like move out of the way. And Homicide, to be fair, like Justin mentions, he does tell the fans to move out of the way like 3 times. He's like, look, move out of the way. I'm going to do this move.
The problem is at the Supper Club there was like nowhere to move.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the problem.
What is the liability of like, it's not SeaWorld where they say you will get wet. Like there was nothing that anyone told me at the time, like one of the high caliber athletes might just jump on you. Like, no. That would hurt.
I know one time in Ring of Honor, I think a girl got hurt by like a ricocheting chair or something, and they as the make good, they knew she liked Jack Evans, so they sent Jack Evans to like talk to her and hang out. I was just thinking, let's say you did get hurt by Homicide, like Matt and Justin, like is there a wrestler on this show this night that would have been a good make good? Like, oh, this guy Colt Cabana's going to hang out with you for 15 minutes, and will that make it you not sue us? Like, would that have worked out?
Shane Douglas.
He's going to have the most uncomfortable conversation. But, Matt,
it stood in great contrast to, I watched this, I think, just 2 days after Darby Allin just got thrown into the crowd. But then he, like, threw him onto Darby Allin's family, so that's okay.
Yeah,
that should be the rule.
Yeah, because I think that I remember people were like, why are they still wrestlers in the front row when they had a crowd back? And then like finally halfway through the show, they're like, oh, that's why, like to catch him. But they were not going to do the Ring of Honor, just hope that fans would save his life. But Matt, I completely agree about this match. I feel like, just like you, I thought James Gibson has been great in Ring of Honor in 2005, but I feel like I've had a couple of matches lately, James Gibson matches, I haven't liked quite as much as you, and I thought, oh god, is this going to be a third? But we are like right simpatico on this one. I would say probably 3.25 stars, just like you. Yeah, it's just slow, and it has a long feeling out process, and it's one of those matches I've noticed, and I love Homicide, but he has had a few matches like this where when things are going to kick into a higher gear, he then slows it right back down again occasionally. For some reason, occasionally in matches he will do that. And like this match, it's not like they were holding back because they did do a couple crazy moves. Like they had the big ace crusher on the ring apron, which actually looked really good. They had, and the Homicide doing an insane tope con hilo into the crowd. But yet then every time we felt like, oh, this match is going to start getting, really crazy or fast paced and kick it up, like they would slow it right back down again. But I did like some stuff. I did like the dueling network, which makes sense because both of these guys have offense that focuses on the neck. And I liked late in the match, early on, Homicide hurts his neck, and I like that he hurts his neck doing a superplex, and that's rare that a wrestler starts selling an injury from a move they do. And what I really liked about that is I know Homicide, like there was times Homicide didn't always love like Julius Smokes as a match. Obviously, I think he liked him, but like it wasn't his idea. And when he's trying to sell the neck, when he does the superplex, for anyone that watches this, like Julius Smokes is just being full Julius Smokes mode, and you can see Homicide in like a really genuine way, be like, shut up for a second, like just please.
Yeah, and actually, that's something I forgot to mention. I'm sorry. This was the first time I really saw much Julius Smokes, and I found him extremely annoying the first time I saw him. By the second time, I liked him, but he was particularly annoying during this match, and it was validating to see that Homicide seemed to think so too.
Like Julius Smokes is a great character, but if there is a flaw, like sometimes he can be completely overbearing and take away from a match, and sometimes you want him to have the focus. But like here, clearly Homicide was like probably thinking, this is the moment of the match where I start selling an injury. I really want this to be important. And Smokes is just completely taking the focus. And it looks like Homicide's just like, come on, like, please, just for a second, shut up. And
I'm so relieved to hear this because I didn't even bring it up. I didn't know if it was like slander to say that he's super annoying. So that's
he's definitely not always. Like he's a really good character and adds to things. This was a particularly not effective night for him.
Yeah.
I did like his shirt though.
Yeah, what did that say?
So it was first of all, it was a Dropkick Murphy shirt, and I don't know if this is just one of their shirts or he had it modified, but the back said "fuck like a beast."
Yep. I wanted to make you say it. So people could use that as a drop.
Definitely not one of the most offensive things said on the show.
So
I want people to make that one of the cool drops is Matt saying "fuck like a beast?" question mark.
Question mark. It's the question mark that sells it. I dug late in the match too, where after all the neck work, where Homicide, when he went for another superplex, he did a double arm superplex instead of a regular superplex. And Punk actually on commentary did a very smart thing where he's like, maybe Homicide switched to that so he wouldn't hurt his neck again, like on the first one. And I thought there were some cool moves. Like I think Gibson did like a picture perfect Tiger Driver, and it got one of the like hottest near falls probably of the year so far. Like crowd was really into that near fall. And Matt, just like you, I really thought a big flaw in this match was, the story of this was supposed to be Gibson with a new harder edge, and he's not going to play to the fans anymore after his promo on the last show. And it's supposed to play to the finish where, he's choking Homicide on the ropes and he shoves the ref away, and that shoving the ref away gives Homicide just the distraction he needs to hit him in the nuts and get the lariat. Except, like you said, Gibson wrestled most of this match just like he always would, very straight and respectful. And he just did a couple choking on the rope spots. So to see him all of a sudden like shove the ref away and like trying to sell it, like it seemed like he didn't do a good enough job really being consistent selling that story. But I still thought overall, like again, 3.25 star match, and like you said, a good match is disappointing for these two because they're so great that just kind of good. It wasn't good enough, but still good match. After the match, Gibson attacks Homicide until Julius Smokes makes the save with a back rake and then some punches, and even then a pile driver from Julius Smokes. Homicide sets up a table in the ring, but then Jay Lethal's music hits. Jay comes out in his neck brace. He's clutching his neck in pain, but he still manages to attack Smokes and Homicide. He puts Homicide on the table, takes off his neck brace, hits him with a top rope splash through the table. Low Key and Monster Mac, and then someone else I don't recognize, then quickly run in. Lethal escapes to the crowd. Matt, I don't know who that third unnamed Rottweiler was, but because Ring of Honor seems to never mention Monster Mac or anyone else that shows up with the Rottweiler posse on these kind of New York shows, I don't know who it is. I will have there's some other masked men that come out later that apparently I will have information on their identity, but at that point it's intermission. Gary Michael Capetta is backstage with Dunn Marcos, who was just covered in dried blood. Marcos says it's going to take a lot more than a little blood to keep them down. And if the Carnage Crew want to keep this going, they know where to find them, taking down the ring like they always do. So
if they were really sitting there for that length until intermission with that blood all over them, that's freaking disgusting.
Yeah.
Remember,
because they could have washed off, and they just chose not to for this promo that no one will remember.
Cody, after the match with his brother, left his Crimson Mask of Blood on for a very long time, and he said something very, like, fetishy about it. Like, sometimes it just feels good.
Hey, you know what? Fair enough.
I don't even like when I have crusty blood in my nose from a nosebleed, let alone caked on my face. But
Trevor, I like it when you do.
Trevor gigged on a podcast we were doing, and he immediately panicked and stopped the show.
Yes, there's an episode of a 5-star match game where I scratch a bug bite and it will not stop bleeding during the show, and I make sure that everyone knows that. But next up we have CM Punk defeating Roderick Strong via submission in 24 minutes 5 seconds when he made Strong tap out to the Anaconda Vice. Justin, you got to see a late indie run CM Punk match. You got to see the man. You got to be one of those people that could say, "Man, I saw CM Punk before he was cool." You always get some credit there. You got some cool little indie cred there, literal indie cred. What'd you think about seeing Punk live? This was definitely, you got to see Punk when he was beloved. Like at this moment, this was, I believe, like Matt and I have been covering on recent shows, like how fans started to feel, I feel like with the last couple shows, fans started to realize that maybe Punk was going to leave. This was the show where fans definitely felt like, you could tell watching it, like the crowd reaction and just everything.
Clap. Well, it had already been announced, right? Like it was already reported that he had signed, right?
Well, that Ian Rotten thing he said on the IWA Mid-South show the day before, he basically said, like, Punk's going to be gone in a week. And so this crowd definitely was treating this like, this is probably the last time we're ever going to see this guy, like, not in WWE. But, Justin, what did you think about all this?
Yes. I think even on the 2002 show, it's one of the only 2 times I get to feel very smart about seeing a wrestler on an indie show and thinking he was good. Being like, hey, this guy, I'm an astute talent guy, like Mark Henry, sign me to recruit people for you.
Justin discovered CM Punk.
Exactly. 2002, a nascent CM Punk. And then also, when we went to the 2009 show, I was like, Matt, the Young Bucks are doing good match. And he was like, I know. And I was like, but... They were wrestling, I think, Cesaro, maybe.
No, it was the Briscoes, as a matter of fact.
Oh, yeah. But Cesaro was on that show, I think.
Yes.
Anyway, but yeah, I was like, Matt, they're doing fast moves, kicking out, double team, and he was like, I know, they're wrestlers. They've been wrestlers for a while. And I was like, but I'm stupid.
That's Justin's catchphrase. But I am stupid.
As a DVD presentation, I didn't know how much sense it made that like CM Punk does commentary for the entire show, leaves for an intermission, I guess, to change and briefly stretch, comes out, wrestles a match, goes back, showers, comes out and does more commentary. Shouldn't he be preparing?
It's even weirder when he does it like right before a grudge match, like a real serious grudge match, and he's making jokes on the show, and then he's like, and then he comes out for his match and he's just like so incredibly intense. Like that's weirder, but otherwise we're used to it.
Yes. My in-ring observations, seems to me like Roderick Strong targets the back. What else? That's largely what I have to say about the match. It was fun to see these guys in that context. That's pretty much my only observation for the entire show. And then a question to the boys is, Tony Khan, being a guy who loves to pony up the big bucks for any song, is he a nerd who thinks he would pay for this song for CM Punk, or would he go all the way and pay for Cult of Personality.
I feel like he should do both. Like he should usually come out to Cult of Personality, but like when there's like the big match Punk or like the Demon Punk, or then he puts out Miseria Cantare. And by the way, Trevor,
DM Punk.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just Twitter.
Yeah. And by the way, Trevor, this, even though I saw a few CM Punk matches in ROH after this, during the summer of Punk, this is the only time I ever got to see him enter to this music.
Wow.
That's right.
And that's, that was a really, iconic music for him, even
Great
though
entrance,
people, yeah.
Matt and I weren't close enough to the barricade to slap it. I'm sorry to report.
Yeah, to slap each other.
I want to slap Justin right now.
So I really like this match. I thought it was very good, like 3 3/4 stars. I put it right below great, but I feel like this is a match that the more exciting it got, the less story it got. Because at first it was very keeping to a story where I think the very first third of the match, it's kind of a classic Punk story. Like Punk is really good. We've learned from the Samoa Joe trilogy of doing a very simple, basic story where he kind of is doggedly going after something. So first 8 minutes of this match, he's just going after Roderick's arms, and he won't let go. He'll just keep going after it, and he avoids every chop. Like, in fact, Strong does not successfully hit a chop until 8 minutes into the match. And I really like that, because when you constantly try and avoid someone's move, it makes the move come off as really important and scary that you're working so hard to avoid it. What I didn't like was then at that point, once Strong finally chops Punk, they do a lot of chopping back and forth, and Punk gives as good as he gets with the chops. In fact, I think he wins a couple of the exchanges. I don't know if he ever really loses a chop exchange with Strong. I felt like when you're working so hard to avoid it, and at this point, Strong's two things were, I'm the guy who chops hard, and I'm the guy who does all the backbreakers. And so having Punk basically match him chop for chop when that isn't Punk's thing, I was kind of like, you did such a good job avoiding it. Maybe you shouldn't. You should just let him beat you up with chops and not go chop for chop with him. And likewise, I felt like as the match, it was getting more exciting. They were doing more near falls, but they kind of completely forgot about the arm stuff that, Punk worked so hard at first. And then by the last half of the match, they're just going into much more of the traditional indie, your move, my move, let's try and make this exciting. And it was, but I do feel like there was a great match here if they had managed to tie everything in the start into the exciting part at the end, but they really didn't. But I still thought it was a really fun match. Lots of neat things, like Punk holds onto a wrist lock, even though Strong monkey flips him, he still holds onto the wrist lock. I liked there's a moment where Strong does a pump handle where Punk's arm is between his own legs, and he uses that to basically make Punk low blow himself, which I thought was funny. There was, this was also a match I noticed where you could tell this was probably right around Punk started really watching his Kenta DVDs, because he started throwing a lot of kicks, I noticed, in this match. And obviously we weren't that far away from Go to Sleep era CM Punk, so he was probably getting into Kenta around this time. There was a cool moment where Punk goes for the Shining Wizard, and Strong just turns it into a powerbomb backbreaker, which was really cool. But Matt, before I give it to you, couple moments on commentary that I thought were funny. First off, Gabe says Punk's going to be a rich man very soon. Gabe's outright acknowledging that Punk's probably gone to WWE soon, or somewhere at least. He outright says Ring of Honor can't compete with the big companies like WWE for money. And then he says, trying to put over, the storyline, which is, Punk may be leaving, but his last goal is to win the Ring of Honor World title. Gabe says at one point, if Punk never won the Ring of Honor World title, it would eat at him. If you got to one day do something really big, beat Triple H in the main event of WrestleMania in Chicago. And I thought the idea of him trying to say the Punk's ideal thing in WWE would be to wrestle Triple H at WrestleMania. I was like, oh man, you got it right and you got it wrong at the same time here. But Matt, what did you think about this?
I thought it was a really, really, really good match. In fact, I might go as far as to say, and I know, there's no way to just jump at this right off of memory, but in my estimation, this might have been the best, straight, outside of the Joe matches. This might have been CM Punk's best straight singles match in ROH, like non-gimmick. Obviously the Joe matches were all much better, but like I can't think of another singles match he had that was just like a match, like a wrestling match with somebody that was better than this. I think, like you mentioned, he's starting to do more of that kick stuff. We're noticing that now. But also, like, he's just like, this is a moment where, he's got into great shape. He's gotten much smoother athletically by this point. And, it's actually very stark to watch the evolution of him. Because obviously he was always a good wrestler, but a lot of that was his, mental ability to put together a really good match. He also was known for maybe being a little bit, less mechanically smooth as some more natural athletic types. And I feel like if, by this era in 2005, you wouldn't necessarily know that he was ever less mechanically smooth than other more athletic types. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because what's the line to famously dog him? It's like he can't have a great match. He can only simulate having a great match.
Yeah, which was always that was very early on. I think when he got into the main roster, it was like, the smart, it was one of those eras when the indie darling came up, they had to instantly say, well, he actually isn't a good wrestler, even though the fans are reacting to them and everyone likes their matches. Yeah, and it was like, it was literally, he just simulates good wrestling. He isn't actually a good wrestler, which is insane. It is insane to think if you simulate good wrestling, like that is wrestling. It's
unlike actually wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I also noted that I wrote like, why is Punk going toe to toe with Strong when it comes to chops? When that's like one of Strong's dominant moves. But I did like that when they were chopping each other at one point, they were yelling, "Give up! No, you give up!" Like while they were chopping. Like I thought that was fun. And I do like that. I like the storyline that this is Punk's ultimate goal to win that title before he leaves the Indies. Like that's his one thing that he never did. He also never won the Pure title, if we're really being technical about it. But and that Strong is the quote policeman standing in the way. But did you notice that really Strong plays this match totally straight too? He's not really like doing anything dirty to try to cripple Punk. He's just having a match with him, right? Yeah. And like, so that's another reason where I'm like, are they just baby faces now? But yeah, the match is really good. Like just the execution is so good. I think Punk is easily the most over person on this whole show, and so the crowd is really into it, which always helps. And I thought the finish was a little too sudden for me. Like Strong does get the low blow, but it's like it's a low blow that doesn't seem as bad because he pulls he goes through Punk's legs and pulls Punk's own arm into him. It doesn't seem quite as evil, but then Punk avoids the pump handle and hits the Shining Wizard, and then pops right into the Anaconda Vice, and the tap out is like immediate. That was a little too sudden for me, but I thought it was entertaining and well executed. Like I didn't really mind the lack of arm work as much in the sense of that's just kind of what they do at the beginning of matches. They work on a body part and then they move on. Like, and it didn't seem as egregious to me as it is in some matches. But I didn't think this was like a match of the year or anything. But I thought this was a really good match, like a match that if they ever put this match up on YouTube, I would say check it out. Like it doesn't feel as long as it is, and it's quite good.
The other commentary. Oh, go on.
Sorry.
No problem.
Both your observations stirred up some memories for me. Is that while watching this, I learned from your podcast, if Punk calls out for the Pepsi plunge, he's not going to do it, and that happened.
That's exactly right.
Thanks for the years.
Yep.
And yeah, I agree. I thought the chops were unusually nasty for not what I was used to seeing Mr. Punk do. And like a thought comes into your head and you don't want to do it, and then it's the only thing you can think about because you try not to think about it. So when they started doing those chops, I started thinking, Strong is a little tough man in long tights who works with like a dynamic, aggressive snap to his moves. And they started chopping each other, and I started pretending, even though I didn't want to. I was like, what if this is the match that Punk had with Benoit at the show 2 years later that Benoit no-showed because he was dead or whatever. And then I started watching it as if it was Punk versus Benoit. And I was like, stop thinking this.
Justin?
Yeah.
What has gotten into you?
But no, I didn't want to, but the flight of fancy occurred to me once, and then I was like, stop pretending this is happening. But it was so weird that I couldn't stop. And then what you said about the commentary was funny. The Triple H thing, which is funny because he was going to have a main event, or one of the 5 main events of WrestleMania 30 against Triple H. It wasn't in Chicago. Saying that would not mean as much as the ROH title reminded me of when Tommy Dreamer would be in the Royal Rumble and Joey Styles would be like, if Tommy won the Royal Rumble, he would probably challenge for the ECW title. And you'd think, that's stupid.
Oh, there was another thing also. Oh, you're still going, Justin, sorry.
Finally, would just be part of the commentary of Punk as the desired free agent and like the love of the game versus the we can't compete with that was like, WWE, that's the difference of hundreds of millions versus a couple $1,000 is a direct comparison that was made. And I was like, wow, that's, it'd be really hard to turn down those two deals in comparison to one another.
Yeah, I couldn't figure that out. I'm so glad you brought that up because I didn't write that down, but I couldn't figure that out because, Gabe says WWE to Ring of Honor is a couple $100 million to a couple $1,000, and I thought, well, that can't be contracts, but that also Ring of Honor, that can't be revenue either. $2,000. Like, I'm sure the tickets, they're selling more DVDs than that. It was like $200 million to $2,000. That's the comparison. Yep. I don't know what.
Like, how do I make this scale? Is in like per month? When is Punk signing his couple $100 million contract? Or when do you make? Does your company just make a couple $1,000? So cool. Go ahead, Matt. Thank you.
I was going to note one other thing. A guy in the crowd yelling to Punk, "See you on Velocity," and Punk just goes, "Yes, you will, because you will be watching." And then he kicks strong, and I thought that's just awesome.
I also thought that's very confident of Punk, that guy's going to be watching Velocity.
Well, that was the point.
Yeah,
he's a dork.
That was the joke.
He's reading the Cubs fans' recaps of Velocity. Yes, and you'll probably get into this in his actual interview, which I guess I'm preempting, but I thought with the regard to the Velocity guy and the people heckling him, it's very funny the way he puts it in the interview, which is like, you guys pay your money and you're allowed to say whatever you want, so I'm not going to call you out, I'm not going to single you out or insult you, and then he proceeded to do exactly that.
Yeah, so that leads into the post-match thing. I guess the one thing we should mention about the match that leads into that is the crowd reaction is a big part of this match because we're getting the big, we know you're leaving and we're going to miss you crowd reaction right from the start, where Punk is, Punk usually always has some haters in every crowd, but other than a few fans, this is a pretty overwhelmingly we love you Punk crowd. There's, please don't go chants early. There's a few fans that are chanting for Strong, and there are a few people that are chanting sucks after people chant for Punk. But overall, very high. But Punk, this is CM Punk in a nutshell. He singles out those 3 fans during the match and makes sure to call as much attention to them as possible, even though it probably is the only 3 fans in the crowd that are negative. He at one point, Punk just points to them and goes, "You've got 3 fans, Roddy." And he does the Velocity. He goes to the Velocity heckler. And I will say that the fans were apparently mad at the heckler too, because at one point I think they're even like chant at the heckler like shut the fuck up, like they want the guy to stop being a heckler. But anyway, so after the match, the crowd again chants "Please don't go" for Punk and end up giving him a big standing ovation that people actually get to their feet. They followed by a "Thank you, Punk" chant. Punk shakes Roderick's hand. And then Punk says a bunch of stuff to Strong that like it's not but you can tell he's like saying a bunch of things because he's just talking to Strong's ear. And Strong then pats him on the back. Punk gets on his knees. He kisses the Ring of Honor logo in the center of the ring, which I wrote is the bravest spot of his wrestling career.
Punk is that straight edge?
Punk grabs the mic and he first asks, where are the three guys in the crowd, like Justin said, that hate his guts? Punk wants everyone to sit down except those three. Punk says he respects them because they pay to come here and to say whatever they like, but they're not the ones with the microphone. Punk says he's not here to single out or insult them because they want that. Punk says, simply put, those three fans put their money in Punk's pocket and his face on their t-shirts. He says, I'm an asshole, and I'm the first to admit it, but I'm also the first to put everyone else before myself, except this one time. He tells Roderick that he knows Aries sent him to cripple Punk, that Aries wants nothing more than to hold on to the Ring of Honor World title, but Aries doesn't have Punk's animalistic mentality. Punk describes himself as part animal, part machine, and says regardless of who he works for, come the Sunday morning after the next show, he'll be the Ring of Honor World Heavyweight Champion, because that's the last thing he has to accomplish in independent wrestling. Punk says those three fans have doubted him from day one, but he feeds off that doubt. It drives him. It makes him what he is, which is better than those guys. So he basically says, I'm better than you. He basically invents MJF here.
That's been Punk's catchphrase for a long time, though.
Yeah,
straight edge means I'm better than you, yeah.
This is more condensed just to literally, I'm better than you. But yeah, you're right.
Because he started in the middle of matches, he would go, better in the world, and then eventually upgraded to best as he got better.
Better than most. Punk tells Strong to tell Aries that he has a week to sleep with that belt and do whatever he wants to it. Because in New Jersey, which Punk then sarcastically says, my favorite city, New Jersey, because for those who don't know, that's always one of the main markets in Ring of Honor that seems to, no matter whether he was a face or heel, really had the highest percentage of people that shit on CM Punk.
And also would be like the quietest for his matches.
Yeah, so which I wonder if they specifically timed the world title change, knowing that the heel turn was coming right after for New Jersey, with that in mind, knowing that would be the city most likely to maybe shit on Punk. But Punk says, I'm coming home. I'm coming home with the one thing that's eluded me all this time, the Ring of Honor Championship belt. And he ends by asking the fans to chant for the future of the company, chant for Roderick Strong. He leaves the ring. The crowd does, in fact, give Roderick a big chant, followed by a big generic Ring of Honor chant. Punk screams, yeah, you're goddamn right, Ring of Honor. And I thought this was a very good live promo, but the thing I also noticed was this promo kind of, I think, sums up Punk to a T, his psychology of, like, his real life psychology, because, Matt, we've seen a lot of matches where, most of the crowd likes Punk, but there's a few fans that maybe aren't liking him. And there's so many matches where Punk will, like, focus on those fans, whether he just tells them, like, he acknowledges them or he really focuses on them, to the point where, like, there are probably a bunch of Punk matches where, like, no one would have noticed if he just ignored those fans, but he ends up, like, bringing so much attention to them because he just has to. And I feel like all that stuff Punk talks about in this promo where he's like, the three people heckling me is, like, what drives me. I feel like that probably is Punk. Like, Punk is probably the kind of guy, I feel like, where 1,000 people in a room could be telling him he's great, and he'll focus on the one person in the room that doesn't like him. And that just seems to be, for better and for worse, like, who CM Punk is maybe as a real human being. And but I thought this was a really good promo. It had a really cool energy, and it really hyped you up for the final quote-unquote match of his on the next show. But what did you think?
Well, I remember one thing at the end of this promo. Justin, do you remember the words you said to me right at the end as Punk walked away?
Something great, I'm sure.
Well, I think you were trying to channel Dave Meltzer, but you said, just quote, that was a hell of a deal.
Yes, okay. And I mean, I was being sincere, but I was also joking about Dave's phraseology.
Yes, that's how I took it. But that's what I would say. This was a hell of a deal.
Yeah, I mean, he basically, Ring of Honor didn't do a lot of lengthy in-ring promos, and this is one where not only was it really good, but Punk really had the crowd, I think, in the palm of his hand. And even though it is kind of weird that he made one of his final promos basically about three hecklers out of a crowd that loved him.
Like you said, though, that's him, man.
Yeah, that is him.
I feel blessed because technically it was not his farewell promo.
It was his final babyface promo.
Yeah,
exactly. Yes. So it had all the trappings of one because it was supposed to be. And like you said, it pretty much is. So I saw that where he's like, "Well, I'm going to WWE. I'm going to do good," and he did. And then I come back and see Danielson, and He's like, I'm going to go kick John Cena's fucking head in. And I'm like, well, that's a beautiful dream, sir. Good luck. And he did. So congratulations to the two Wonder Twins. They damn did it.
And next up, we have the Ring of Honor Pure Title match, the semi-main event. Samoa Joe defeated Nigel McGuinness, 19 minutes, 39 seconds with the... God, I forgot to write down the finish. This was the Muscle
Buster, yes.
Right, yes. So via pinfall, of course. I thought this was on the border of good and very good. This is probably like 3.5, 3 3/4 stars. I like this match a fair bit. I like this was a match where it wasn't, like it's not going to be like a match of the year. They just didn't quite hit that gear. But like I liked so many of the touches, the little touches they put in this match. Nigel's a guy where like a lot of wrestlers, if they repeat spots in a match, you go, why are you doing that? That just makes you look dumb. But for Nigel, for some reason, maybe it's just the nature of his kind of his style and his gimmick. Like him doing repeated spots in the same match, it always like it just works with him. And they do a lot of neat little playing off of that. Like Nigel goes for the headstand kick 3 times in this match. The first time it works. The second time, Joe just murders him with a brutal kick. And the third time, Nigel drops down and kind of fools him into getting caught in the ropes. And they do other stuff like that. Like they do, like Nigel hits the rebound lariat, but then the second time he tries it later in the match, Joe has it scouted. He does the big power slam instead. They even do, Joe does the Uranagi where he's in the corner and the guy runs at him. But then the second time he tries that, like Nigel has kind of an arm drag counter for it. So there's lots of repeated spots, but every time the guy learns something up and is able to change it. But I just like the way these two match up. I like, Nigel doing a lot of technical wrestling in the opening minutes. And then when he tries to throw a strike to Joe, you can see Joe just be like, fuck this, and immediately just start really taking it to like, if you want to do my kind of wrestling, we'll do it. Just the way their styles interact. But mostly, and I like this, there's some good selling in this match, where Joe gets his arm worked off of, and he did little neat touches to sell it, like grabbing, even little stuff like shaking it out before he hits a power bomb, or even when he does an STF to Nigel, he has to grab his elbow and not like his wrist because it hurts him too much. But what I really liked, Matt, we talk usually about a lot of times I don't like I think the pure rules, they're limiting. The matches always go a couple certain ways. This was a pure title match. I really liked the way it added to it because I like there's a key spot in this match where Joe uses all his rope breaks. Nigel gets Joe caught up in the ropes. He basically kind of ties his ropes, his legs into the ropes in what they describe as like a figure 4 around the ropes using his arms on Joe's legs. And to do this move, he has to stand outside the ring, which he's allowed to because Joe has used up all his rope breaks, so the ropes are legal. But because of that, he's still staying outside the ring. And because a pure title match also has a count-out rules, there's a count. So you get this really neat thing where like Joe is trying to hold on and not tap out. He knows he can survive if he gets to 20. And likewise, Nigel's trying to hold on to the very last second, but even though if he stays out too long, he'll get counted out. And I thought, okay, that's a cool, unique spot you wouldn't get in a match otherwise. And that's the kind of things I wish more pure title matches had, like unique spots like that. And I think Nigel will find some in his reign. But overall, I like the match quite a bit. It's not quite great, but I thought this was a fun match. And Justin, what did you think?
I thought that was one of my 5 and perhaps final indelible memory was the clever spot of the rope break versus the 20 count. And it was just as fun on DVD. I also like the psychology of the match that you touched on of Nigel is like, I'm a little boingy man and I love to boing on the ropes. And Joe was like, if you keep boinging on them ropes, I'm going to wallop you. And he did. And it was a lesson learned. Really mostly just trying to talk myself out of doing a Sex Pistols style accent, which I don't think I have the entry vowels to do. That's all from me. Thank you.
It's my lifelong dream to learn how to do a Pittsburgh accent, Justin, just so you know.
Well, I'll work with you after the show.
Thank you.
You mostly move the vowels over like one of them, and you talk from the back of your throat.
Is the Pittsburgh accent the same as the Philly accent? Because as someone that's only knows the Philly accent from Philly Boy Roy on the Best Show on WFMU, they sound strikingly similar.
There are strong similarities.
Distinct.
Strong
and
differences.
Baltimore's in there as well. The Baltimore thing. I would just watch the Kroll Show Pennsylvania skit.
Pennsylvania,
where Nick Kroll, yeah, that will teach you some of the subtleties and intricacies. With Pittsburgh, I can't really speak to Philadelphia enough. With Pittsburgh, it's just like Arn, still, the vowels are all moved over a little bit.
There's a great YouTube series that was put up, I think, by Wired a few months ago with a dialect coach talking about accents from all over North America. I very much enjoyed it.
So,
the only other observation I have is also going back to Brian Alvarez drops / memes. I think one of the things he did and ran with was was it Lethal Lockdown maybe or Ultimate X, where they have 2 pages of rules and say it's really quite simple. And that's how I felt when they were explaining all the pure title rules, which are mostly easy to follow. But it did remind me of, for all my true sports heads out there, the funny man tweeter John Boyce, I guess is how his name is pronounced, who does the thing. He had a fake explanation of the NFL overtime rules that make no sense, that go first possession per team. Which comes first, score or possession? If coin flip is heads, elect to kick or receive. Same if tails wants possession. If a field goal is kicked on first possession, team on field must acquiesce. So that was cool.
Once they get into the whole closed fist, first you get a warning, then you lose a rope break. If you're out of rope breaks, you get that. At that point, it becomes all right.
It is cool psychology if you memorize all those rules. Yeah. Because they said in the match, so Joe has gotten his one warning, so if he accidentally punches him before Nigel extinguishes his allotted rope breaks, he would lose the title, which changes hands on DQ just because of that.
I mean, the magic of the pure title rules is it combines everything wrestling fans love most, which is not seeing punches and bad disqualifications. And I mean, anytime rules can bring those two things together, I mean, I think that's perfect. But
to ROH's credit, there were not many bad disqualifications in pure title matches. Very few, if any.
Yeah, I like how I'm shitting on the pure rules, even on a match where I literally just said this was a match I thought the pure rules actually added to the match. But Matt, what did you think?
I remember of everybody who was kind of new to me on the show, which, Punk wasn't, Joe wasn't, Low-Key wasn't. Nigel was, and I feel like he impressed me the most. At the time, I just thought he had a lot of personality. I thought he had star power. I still do think that, by the way. But I remember just being really impressed with him live and really liking this match. 16 years later, I don't like the match quite as much, but I thought it was quite good, quite entertaining. I also have very fond memories. I'm sure Justin and I both talk to each other about how cool that rope leg hold versus the 20 count thing was. The one thing that was psychologically kind of silly about it is it's almost like when you put a guy in a hold at the end of an Iron Man match, right? Where the guy pretty much knows, if I just wait 20 seconds, I will not have to give up. So basically the idea is the hold has to be so incredibly painful that you cannot wait that long. And this is a move that Nigel had never done before. So so that really didn't get that over with me. But I thought the spot was cool. As far as moves that he has done before, he did get that arm submission in at some point, and the crowd did not really react to it. And I did not recognize it as that arm submission when I first saw it in 2005. But now I know it's that arm submission. I will say this also. Nigel, another guy, wasn't really totally playing up his newfound heeldom in this match. A little bit, in that he was being kind of avoidant and stuff and trying to be clever. And Joe was kind of it was a babyface spot that Joe would stop him from being clever. But it wasn't, he wasn't being an over-the-top heel in any way. So he's still kind of slowly developing that heel persona. One spot I did like that really got the crowd going was when Joe went for his face wash running boot scrape, but Nigel avoided it by picking up his boot, and then Nigel went for his own running boot scrape, but Joe jumped up, hit a big boot that sent Nigel to the apron, and then knocked Nigel off the apron, which sent him onto the security guard and sent them both over the guardrail. That was such a fun spot. The crowd loved it so much. I also even though so this is one of 4 singles matches that Joe has with Nigel in 2005. This is the second one.
Yeah.
And Joe has been the guy that can avoid the headstand spot. And like you mentioned, Nigel was still able to get it on him 2 of the times, right? Still able to kick him. And Joe succeeded in stopping it once, and he actually busted Nigel's nose real bad with one of them. Nigel was bleeding pretty bad from the nose. But that was there were just a lot of fun spots. That's pretty much what this match was. It was a lot of fun stuff. The guys showed their personality. The execution was good. I like that when Joe hit the muscle buster, it was when Nigel was trying to do another clever spot, he was doing that whole Artful Dodger thing, and he jumped up on the top rope, and Joe just smacked him and then got the muscle buster.
Did you notice that Nigel was so tall that Joe had a hard time getting his head under his shoulder for the muscle buster? And I think the commentary they're trying to be Nigel's fighting it, but you could tell Joe was just Jesus Christ, hard to get this guy's head. I'm used to wrestling guys that are 5'9", this is tough.
That's true also.
I'm embarrassed because Artful Dodger is such a better way to put it than me, who called him a little boingy man.
Well, the Artful Dodger is a literal name for a specific sequence of spots too. It's not just all the stuff that he did, but yeah.
Okay.
The whole thing where he crawls under the leg and all this stuff, but anyway.
You reminded me of the bump into the security guard because I watched him at the time. My recollection is he stayed down for the whole match and sold knocked out, and then when the match was over, he did kind of an amateurish sell of a guy who goes, "What happened?" And slowly gets up and shakes his head and was like, "Duh, who put the lights out?" And then just resumed his security work.
Wow,
he was kind of a non-playable character.
There's nothing better
basics
in wrestling than when someone takes the opportunity to this is my one chance to be in pro wrestling for a second.
Yep.
And they're I'm going to act the shit out of this. Mm-hmm. I love that. That is such a good story.
That's why if you heard me audibly gasp, it was when Matt mentioned him, and I remembered him.
For a second, I was either just as a story, or I was or he's run over his toe with a chair or something.
Or both.
Did that thing where you pick a scab off on a podcast.
You know what you do during podcasts, picking bug bites.
Yeah.
I believe that was Zach, the security guard, who's longtime ROH security.
Of course.
Well, he did a hell of a sell.
Immediately after the match, Shane Douglas runs in to get showered with booze. He immediately grabs the pure title belt from the ref, and he grabs the mic as well. The crowd immediately launches into chants of "fuck you, Shane," and "you still suck," in case he forgot. Shane responds, but between the shitty sound system and how loud the crowd was jeering him, I couldn't make out much of what he said other than "you can kiss my ass." The crowd chants "fuck him up, Joe, fuck him up," as Douglas keeps cutting a promo, but like Justin said earlier, he kind of teases that he's going to throw the belt down, but instead he puts it on Joe's shoulder. Douglas says Ring of Honor impressed him, and Ring of Honor is the shit. We immediately cut away from a segment, and I wrote in my notes, we immediately cut away from a segment more uncomfortable than the time my mom caught me having sex when I was 16, which...
Wow, I didn't know that was canon on your podcast.
Now it is, but...
now everybody knows that Trevor Dame actually got laid as a teenager.
One time. Man, it's like a camel. It's been a long time since I've been just storing it. But
humped.
But yeah, just everyone had to know.
Well, when Shane said that, I can tell you, being in the crowd, everyone went, "Yes, Shane is on our side now. That rules."
It's funny because when Shane was going, before he's like, Ring of Honor is shit. Now he's like, Ring of Honor is the shit. I thought it would have been funny if he instead played off his earlier promo. He's like, earlier I said Ring of Honor could lick my balls, but now after that match, I want to lick Ring of Honor's balls, and just lean into it, try and make the crowd at least laugh.
I'm having a ball.
These were the jokes that made Trevor Dame such a sexy high schooler.
God.
This is what really enraptured the two women that cut themselves.
He said, Emily, I'm going to have 4,000 Twitter followers.
5,000 now.
Holy crap.
I wrote this on Twitter, but yeah, for people that don't know, I recently passed 5,000 Twitter followers, which I don't know why either, but I wrote this on Twitter, but for those who don't know, I thought this was funny, just this coming up where, like, right after that happened, and like Matt wrote to me and it was like, oh, you got 5,000 followers. And I also noted, Matt, I've never told you this, I know a good friend of yours was my 5,000 followers, so, and right after that you wrote the message congratulating me, so I can only assume you told that person to follow me so you could do your tweet instead of having to wait around for it. But anyway,
I did not. I swear I didn't. What was it? Really a friend of mine who did it, who put you over the top?
It was Michael Foodie was my 5,000 followers.
I mean, I did mention that my co-host was about to get 5,000 followers. I did not tell him to follow you, I swear.
See, okay, I believe it. I thought that was so perfect because I thought Michael Foodie's following. I thought, oh, that's 5,000. Then right after that was the Matt tweet. I was like, I know the connection
ready
here.
To auto post, but he kind of like he pickup artisted him into following you, or he subliminally influenced him into doing it, which is even more impressive.
But I thought that was so funny, though, because there was this moment where it was like 5,000 followers. Matt's like, congrats. I was like, oh, this is dumb internet thing. But I thought, oh, wow, it's weird that 5,000 people follow me on Twitter. And then right after that, my brother called me and was like, yeah, I'm getting engaged to be married. And I was like, oh, I've got 5,000 Twitter followers. Like, I didn't want to say, but I felt like this is like.
But wait, Trevor, before you self-deprecate, are there more people in the world who have been engaged and married, or more people who have 5,000 Twitter followers?
You know what, Matt? You're right. I truly was having the better day there than my brother.
You know what would be cool is 5,000 Twitter followers and the whole listenership of all you great fans out there who are so dedicated. We love you. We love the fans of Through the Years, and we are going to link you.
The Drombozos is what we call them.
Well, we are going to link them all to Trevor's brother's wedding registry. And hey, if you want to support the show, like, they could use some fresh Tupperware and the good towel.
Stand mixer.
Justin, I don't know if you know this, but you are right now on the 14th most popular wrestling podcast in Denmark, I believe.
Oh my God! Hey, I've never felt more podcast pressure than when you said ahead of time that we were going to do this and people started faving it. I was like, oh no, they want to hear this. Now I have to say good things.
Yeah, I hate it when he previews the show, because what if I just like start the show and I just start being like, you know what, fuck it, I don't want to do this anymore. And then but I've already committed.
What if you did the Shane Douglas thing and we're like, this is a good podcast for me to poop on?
Did you know that Shane Douglas actually did Triumph the Insult Comic Dog?
Wasn't that, yeah, so he rattled off a list of champions. Wasn't he, like, directly invoking the throw down the NWA title thing?
Yes.
And then he saved us. Okay, good. I'm smart.
So this is a crazy connection, but, and yet another tangent, but, I just recently listened to Lenny Leonard, just did a former Ring of Honor announcer and apparently future Ring of Honor announcer. Lenny Leonard had just done a interview on a podcast that is friendly with us, that obviously that we always endorse, an honorable mention, and I highly recommend that episode. It's a great episode, great interview. But because of that, I kind of got on like, oh, I wonder if Lenny Leonard's done any other interviews, because he was really personable and interesting to listen to, talk to. And he did an episode months ago on Between the Sheets, the David Bixenspan Chris Zellner podcast. And he actually tells a story there where apparently he used to do Takeshi Morishima as Triumph the Insult Comic Dog impressions. It was the one night when he and Dave Prazak were like up late doing the commentary, and it was kind of loopy, and apparently it just became a running joke. So I can't believe when you mentioned Triumph the Insult Comic Dog, it's like there is actually a Triumph the Insult Comic Dog Ring of Honor connection, apparently, because apparently that was like an inside joke.
Well, yeah, there's two connections, because there's that, and there's also that they got Shane Douglas, who does the voice of Triumph the Insult Comic Dog, to come on this show.
Of course. Shane Douglas's hot new show on Fox. Great job. So anyway, the one thing to mention about this promo about this is they apparently cut out a lot of stuff at this point because according to reading the Derek Bergen live report from the Pro Wrestling Torch site, I'll just read his report. He wrote, as the fans were shitting on Shane, both he and Samoa Joe were doing a back and forth promo in the ring. In the funniest bit of the night, some girl on the balcony, clearly quote unquote feeling good, started screaming, ECW, ECW. Okay. The crowd got even rowdy. Exactly. But Joe calmed the situation and said, don't blame Shane that his old ring rats follow him around everywhere. Classic.
Yeah.
That's Derek Bergen, not me. Overall, and I loved the guy, but the Shane Douglas and Ring of Honor experiment was a flop. Joe was awesome here and did one of his better promos. He told Douglas that Ring of Honor has up-and-comers saving your business. Ring of Honor has men that were rejected by your business. Emphasis on your. And in here, we settle things by shaking hands like men. So, yeah, if you watch the DVD, the entire Joe thing is cut out. Basically, all you see at this point is Shane comes in, he gives Joe the belt, he says Ring of Honor's the shit, and they immediately cut away. And that could partly have been tying restraints, or that also might have probably have just been them trying to cut their losses with the Shane Douglas thing.
Yeah, it was both. I that all came back to me now that you said it, but yeah, I mean, I think there was no reason to put that on the DVD. It was for the best. I mean, It probably would have been better if none of that was on the DVD, but hey, what are you going to do?
Yeah, because you could have cut the whole thing out, honestly.
Yeah, and then just given more time to Azrael celebrating after he won.
And the DVD goes to a full 3.00, but they had time for the news reports about the show.
Right.
But yes, and that stirred my memory because I think what me and Matt talked about at the time is it would have gotten such a gigantic pop if Samoa Joe had choked out Shane Douglas, but then you'd have to negotiate in between the two angles. So no one likes you, and it would rule if they made you look stupid. So instead of being the cool guy who endorses us, can we beat you up? And I'm sure that would have gone over very smoothly.
So next we go to another clip from the WB11 segment that aired weeks earlier. This we can see in the corner from 5:22 in the morning. It's still dark out, and Aries is in the ring with Azrael and Prince Nana when a plainclothes Low-Ki just jumps in the ring, shoves Julie Chang, and gets in Aries' face. And at this point, Julie Chang asks, who's this guy?
I told you, she's Art Donovan.
Yeah. Key tells Aries he's in his backyard. And come Saturday, he won't be the top dog in the yard. He then pie faces Aries, and Aries takes him down. So it's interesting because this was actually to build up the last New York show, but presented the way they set things up, it actually works also to set up the match we're about to see, which is the main event.
So,
Matt, go on.
Well, I wonder if there's ever been an angle in the history of wrestling that was shot that early local time. 5:30 in the morning, right before the sun comes up.
I also because the clips, if I remember correctly, this was, one of those Good Morning American style type morning shows, and apparently they were doing one Ring of Honor segment per hour for the entirety of the morning show. And clearly this segment came before all the other ones we saw earlier.
Yeah, it was the first one, yeah.
But it was also, this was the segment that was shooting an angle that was supposed to get people to go to the show, and they chose 5:22 in the morning for that angle. The one
Loki must have been Loki must have been yeah, you know what, I'm busy after 6 a.m.
Julie Chang wrestling Lacey and hugging them, that was in the prime time morning slot. The Low-Ki angle was you'd have to be getting ready coming home from a night shift to have seen it.
Well, look, you know what I think? I think it was a damn shoot. And Low-Ki is not a worker; he's a fighter, and he went into business for himself on the news.
And that brings us to the non-sanctioned, non-title main event. Low-Ki defeated Austin Aries via pinfall in 21 minutes, 59 seconds after he hit a top rope key crusher. The Rottweiler posse, they had a big entourage for the show like they often do on New York shows. Like I said earlier, I didn't recognize all the names, but Derek Bergen, who was there live, his report said the Rottweilers included a masked deranged Azrael and B-Boy. So I didn't recognize, didn't realize Deranged and Azrael, who are, I don't think at least in Ring of Honor canon, were part of the Rottweilers, pulling double duty here. And B-Boy there, that's a cool little cameo. But Matt, big, main event, second time these two have wrestled in Ring of Honor, but also kind of a controversial booking decision, maybe having the world champ lose in a result that never really has a payoff. But what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, looking back in 16 years later, the result feels like kind of like who cares, right? Like that didn't affect anything, right? At the time, I could imagine it being like, what the hell are you doing? This was a match to determine who thinks that COVID is the fakest, and low key won. Now this what was I made a joke before the last match of theirs that they reviewed, which was in December of 2004, that it was actually a mask versus mask match, but the winner had to put on a mask. So the thing about this is supposed to be like this big main event angle, but the thing that they just showed, with Low-Ki coming up to Aries on the morning show, that was the only thing they did to lead up to this match, right? Like, there was nothing else that precipitated this. There wasn't this big feud, and it didn't lead to a Generation X versus Rottweilers feud either. Like, it was just like a one and done thing. It's very weird, actually, that they made this the main event. But so I could imagine someone watching this match and being like, "Oh, Austin Aries, Low-Ki, they were really great at that time. This match was kind of disappointing," but I actually don't feel that way, because I remember feeling this match was kind of boring and like plotting and slow, and watching it back now, I really liked it. So I actually think my bad memories of the match made me enjoy the match more in retrospect. I thought it was good. It was like very good. The execution was good. So it was funny that, first of all, Low-Ki, when he came out, like you said, he had the Rottweilers crew with him, except any of the members of the Rottweilers that we know or care about, other than Julius Smokes. like Homicide wasn't there, the Havana Pitbulls weren't there, but like all of the other henchmen and some guys in masks, they were there. And because of that, when Aries walked to the ring, like, he was not being his usual, like, determined self. He seemed very tentative. And Aries was definitely the babyface in this match. Which is another weird thing, because Low-Ki was in his home turf and probably more popular. But still Aries played the face, even though he had been a heel pretty much in every other ROH match up until now. As
we observed about Rod Strong, though, right? Punk was nice to him, and so
this show was their face turn, but like they didn't do anything. They just suddenly started acting like faces, I guess. So Low-Ki does jump Aries before the bell, at one point early in the match, I guess all the other henchmen go to the back, and Smokes tries to trip Aries as he's running the ropes, and Sinclair yells at him to leave ringside. What is this, AEW? Telling the manager to leave ringside? But now, at that point, it's just one-on-one, so they have their match, and it's funny because they mentioned that Aries has a neck injury, but one of the big early spots is that Low-Ki is trying to put Aries' shoulders to the mat, and Aries just, bridges up with his neck, really impressively, and it's like, if your neck is hurt even a little, there's no way you can do that, right? That's just, extra, super strong neck. So I guess the neck injury is not really a factor after all. But Low-Ki does a lot of his kicks and his chops, and he makes Low-Ki faces, and Aries goes for a frog splash, and Low-Ki gets his knees up. Meanwhile, CM Punk on commentary makes Dave Prazak just crack up when he says that he had Roderick Strong tapping like his name was Gregory Hines.
Okay, that's in my notes.
But just the funniest part was just how much that made Dave Prazak laugh.
Maybe the only Gregory Hines reference in wrestling history. It caught me off guard. I think that's almost what got Prazak laughing, was like, did you just reference Gregory Hines?
Yeah, I bet you it wasn't the only one, though. But probably the only one in the 2000s. But so at one point Aries goes for that heat-seeking missile dive, and Low-Ki kicks him really hard. And, whenever Loki is on top, the match really, slows down a lot, which was pretty typical in the heel Loki matches we've seen. But despite the slow pace, Loki is just hitting and kicking so hard, with everything. And he does seem to be targeting the neck with the kicks and the suplexes. And at one point, he's hitting so hard that he even smacks Todd Sinclair hard in the arm when he tries to admonish him. And a few times during the match, Sinclair is counting him as he chokes. And remember, this is a non-sanctioned match, so the crowd just yells at him. Every time Sinclair tries to count, the crowd goes, or two people in the crowd actually are it's non-sanctioned. There are no rules. And
in 4 years, we're going to chant Twinkies at you.
That's right. But it was just funny because I wanted to write that in my notes. Why is he counting? But these two jerks in the crowd did it for me. But, Loki hits all of his double stomps and the crowd goes crazy. No one double stomps like him. At one point, Ares tries to go for the crucifix bomb. Loki blocks it, so Ares goes for a sunset flip. Loki just breaks that up and just, stomps really hard on his chest. And I noted this in my notes at this point. I was I think when we were there live, Justin, we both pretty much assumed that Ares had just been a babyface, right? Because he was pretty much just a face in this match. And, watching it, he wasn't. He wasn't until this show.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know no better.
Yeah.
This man was beating him up, and his neck hurt.
But what gets the crowd to more on Ares' side is that Loki kicks him, and Ares stands up and just dares him to keep coming at him, and the crowd starts to appreciate that. Loki tries to go for a kick. Ares grabs it, hits the shin breaker suplex combo. The crowd loves that. And someone actually yells at Ares. I don't know if anyone else noticed this. You're winning now. Keep it up. Was it you, Justin?
That was me. I was punch him, bounce him off the ropes, give him a back body drop.
That's right.
See where it's going.
And so Ares, I thought, did a pretty good job of keeping up with Loki's hard strikes. He did some pretty stiff ones too. He does start selling the neck though. He does a bridging German, but his neck won't allow him to hold the bridge, and he goes for a twisting press from the apron, but Loki gets his feet straight up and blocks it and follows up with that springboard back kick. And he hits a really brutal one, and Punk mentions that this is the move that legit knocked out Dan Moff, and Ares goes all the way to the floor. It was all of Loki's strikes were just unbelievable, I thought. And there's a long delay, and Loki gets a 2 count off that. Loki goes for another top rope double stomp, but Ares moves, but Loki just follows it up with this really brutal running drop kick into the corner. Then Loki goes for a key crusher. Ares avoids that, turns it into a brain buster, and Punk at this point is just talking about his match next week, which makes sense from Punk's point of view, but I do think it detracted from the match a little bit, that things were getting more intense and Punk was talking about himself. But Ares gets Loki in the Tree of Woe and does his own Tree of Woe double stomp, and I was praising Ares' strikes, but this was not nearly as good as Loki's Tree of Woe double stomp. But the crowd pop's pretty big anyway, and the kick out gets a big pop. Loki follows that up with a really big capo kick that sends Ares into the turnbuckle, but Ares comes back and punts Loki in the head, goes up for the 450, so Loki just kicks Todd Sinclair into the ropes, knocks Ares off onto the turnbuckle. Loki follows him up. There's a bit of a struggle, but Loki wears him out with a bunch of kicks to the head, then hits a top rope key crusher, which he hasn't done that very many times in ROH. I think the last time he did it was maybe against Jody Fleisch. And he hits it, and he beats Ares. And the only real complaint I have, because like I said, it doesn't really matter now, is that he really waits a long time to cover him. Yeah. And it's if you're going to pin him, just pin him. Don't add the insult to the injury. But as far as the match, it was better than I remembered, honestly. Because again, if you were just to look at this on paper, you might say this match wasn't as good as you would think. But compared to my memory, Loki's strikes were just brutal. Ares, has so far rarely gotten to seem more honorable and plucky. Like I said, it was almost like a face turn just through his spirit. it was slow, so, like maybe it wasn't the style of match, you would necessarily want, given that it was non-sanctioned and stuff, but, I maybe would have gone with something shorter, faster, and more violent, but still, it was well worked. I thought it was very good.
Justin, what did you think?
Yes. So part of the reason I am on the show for this episode is the Walt Disney Company wants me to promote Loki's Disney Plus series, which does start on Wednesday, June 8th.
No.
Justin, don't say anything that's going to get us beat up. I live in Brooklyn.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, I mean, Loki is the star of the show. He's doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and you fans won't believe it. Right. I at the time was tired at the end of this show, and in my re-watch 16 years later, I was tired. I watched a whole 3 hours of wrestling for you guys, broken up into 4 safe increments of 45 minutes. I had already seen Punk's match. I had already seen Joe versus Nigel. This was non-title. So the stuff they did was good, but the same feeling of, I guess, anticlimax was there for both. And I mostly came on the show so you would explain to me why Loki won, and I've been waiting 16 years to understand, and I still really don't.
So, first off, I don't know, but I'll try and reason it out in my head. But first, I'll say about the match itself. I thought this was a very good match. Again, I don't think anything on this show was great, but I think there was a lot of matches that were like 3 3/4 or 3.5 stars. I think this would be another that's close. I pretty much, Matt, I think you laid it out really well. There's a lot of really stiff work. There's some really beautiful moves. I think this is a match where you could make a really great highlight video of it. Like if you just showed the best spots from this, it would look like one of the greatest matches of the year. When you watch the whole match, obviously it's not at that level, but stuff like, Aries doing the headstand to get out. I mean, Loki doing the headstand to get out of an arm wringer or something, and Aries drop kicking him as he's doing the headstand, or some of the hard kicks, the top rope key crusher. I mean, there's the biggest spots in this match are incredible. When Aries is doing the neck bridge and Loki's just hitting them with knees as they do a knuckle lock in the bridge. I mean, all that stuff's really cool. I thought it was funny where early on, Key is working over Aries' midsection, and the commentary says, why isn't he going after Aries' neck, because that's his pre-existing injury from other matches, and it's almost like Loki heard them, because right after that he switches to neck work, so it was like, that's a weird coincidence. But yeah, there's been some great Aries world title matches when he won from Joe, the Colt Cage match. But I would say the pattern I'm getting from his reign is so many of his matches are like this. They're like 3 3/4 where he works really hard. There's just a little something that's hard for me to define that isn't there, but still really good match. But what I will say, to me, the story of this match is that booking. It's, I don't get it. I don't get... Because like you mentioned, Matt, there was no feud with the Rottweilers going into it. There's no feud with the Rottweilers coming out of it. Loki and Aries never wrestle each other again. So I thought, why do this match? And so this is what I tried to figure out. I thought, okay, on one hand, Aries and Loki had wrestled once before Aries won the title the year before, and they went to a draw. So you could say, okay, there's unfinished business there. And you could also say from a booking standpoint, Loki was a guy who by this point had already had history of possibly agreeing to do jobs and then changing his mind or not wanting to do jobs. So you could kind of see Gabe being in the, I have no idea if this is the case or not, but you could see Gabe being in like this situation of Loki's a super talented wrestler. He's a big name on the indies and he has a big part of our history. And so I want to book him in matches and I want to book him in big matches that will sell DVDs and tickets, but I also don't trust that he will lose matches, so I have to do things like this. But at the same time, I felt like this is maybe the one match you don't book then. And maybe they just felt like they needed a big match for this show, and this was a match on paper that, it's an intriguing match. But it is crazy that there is, it's the world champion losing, I would say fairly clean. Like, yes, Loki does kick the ref into the ropes, which when Aries is going for the 450 late in the match, and that allows Key to get the win. But even then, Key doesn't immediately get the win. He fights back and forth with Aries on the top rope for a while, so it makes Aries look more like he just lost a battle. And then, like you said, Matt, after he hits the top rope key crusher, Key waits for a while to make a cover, and normally I would like that because it sells how impactful and devastating that move is on both guys. But like you said, it again kind of makes Aries look like a, Aries does look kind of like he just loses clean for the most part. And
he does. He loses clean. This is a clean loss. Like there's no doubt about it.
And also another thing is normally, a lot of times in indie wrestling, and I often don't like it, where you can tell the guy that's going to lose, the guy who's going to win, because he gives most of the offense in the match to the guy who's going to lose because he figures, well, I'm going to win so you can have most of the match. It makes wrestling really predictable. But this one, the opposite, where I felt like Key had like 60 or 70% of the offense on the world champ, and then he beats the champ clean and never gets a rematch. Like, I felt like this is one of those rare times where if Aries was going to lose, he should have gotten most of the match. And instead, I think he gets like the minority portion. He gets maybe like a third of the offense of this match. And the whole thing, it's just kind of bizarre, and it's a weird note in the booking, but I don't know why, Key went over clean. I don't know why it led to nothing. I don't know why, but that's the match. That's the end of the match point of the show, but right after the match, Homicide steps in the ring to check on Low Key. He grabs the mic and he asks what Ring of Honor is going to do when their champ has a broken neck, and what are they going to do when they do something that's banned. And of course, that's him teasing that they're setting up. Low Key then sets up Aries for the double stomp cop killer combo that they injured Jay Lethal with.
No. So hold on a second. So Punk thought he said he was doing something that was banned, but I don't remember them ever saying that move was banned. And I think what he actually said, and I thought this at the time too, was that he said, because he says, what are you going to do, Ring of Honor, when your champion has a broken neck? We're going to do something that's bad for the business. That's what I thought he said. But anyway, that's a small point. But
maybe
anyway, I think that's a more clever line anyway.
Honestly, I was hard to make out, so I was kind of going by the commentary.
Yeah, right. Punk said he said that it was banned. You're right.
Yeah, but you could be right too, because it was hard to make out. So anyway, he and Low Key set up Aries for the double stomp cop killer that they injured Jay Lethal with. But Roderick Strong and Jack Evans, they run in, they fight him off. Monster Mac and the other unknown Rottweilers try to run in, but Evans holds them off. He takes out with the crazy double moonsault to the floor.
A double moonsault is even more impressive, in my opinion, when it's not off the top of a cage.
Yeah, less room, and he's doing, instead of like on firm footing, he's doing it off a ring rope, and Jay Lethal runs in and he dragon suplexes Low Key and then runs out of the ring and into the crowd as Homicide chases after him. So that's your big final in-ring segment for the show.
And so again, like Jack Evans doing like a big babyface spot at the end, like I think it seems that they're babyfaces. It just doesn't make sense how they became babyfaces. I guess Generation Next I'm talking about. But yeah, they did make it seem here like they were going to do stuff with the Rottweilers and Generation Next, and they really don't. Homicide and Jack Evans do have a match against each other on the October New York City show, so I guess you could say they were trying to like book from this, but that match just sort of felt like a random match and not like part of any bigger story.
I think.
Go on.
Sorry. Well, it should set up Low Key for a natural title shot for the belt that Austin Aries will lose in a week. So, and the one thing that certainly was not evident to me in 2005, but I guess kind of I see through the story on this DVD, is that they're telling this thing where Aries' neck is getting hurt and he gets throttled in this match, and Punk is talking on commentary about his neck got all messed up from a sliced bread number 2. And so Punk is going to go into a match, and he's a guy who does a move where you crank on a guy's neck. So you're kind of doing the thing where like they say the champion is getting worn down, like when Bret Hart or John Moxley is about to lose the belt, to give him a reason, but like that usually doesn't entail them dropping a clean non-title match on the way to actually losing again. Yeah.
So we cut to Colt Cabana backstage. He says he loves pro wrestling. He loves pure wrestling. He loves everything. He says when Nigel isn't kicking people in the balls and hitting them in the head, he's a great wrestler, but he did not win the pure title tonight. Colt says when he gets in the ring with Samoa Joe, it's going to be a fun time, and he calls Joe Mr. Meanie Pants. Colt then says,
holy shit.
Colt says he can bring it. He's a wrestler first and foremost. He ends by asking who has 2 thumbs and loves the pure championship. It's him. And of course,
not say this guy.
Yeah.
He left this guy dangling.
He blows his spot. But next, meanwhile, Gary Michael Capetta has found Austin Aries backstage. Aries is not in the mood for talking, but Gary wants to know how his neck is. He wants the scoop. Aries says, obviously, it's still here, and it ain't broken because he's still walking, so it's just fine. Gary asks about his next opponent, CM Punk. Aries says no matter what Punk does, the belt's staying around his waist, so just very brief promo to set up that. And then finally, to end the DVD, we cut to Dunn and Marcos, and they're taking down the ring, as they said they would. They are the Ring Crew Express, after all. Marcos says they're right here, right where they said they'd be, but they don't see the Carnage Crew anywhere. And then one of the most hilarious moments on the DVD, after the Ring Crew Express said, we don't see the Carnage Crew anywhere, the camera does a 180, and we see the Carnage Crew is drinking at a bar that is probably no more than 15 feet away from them. and Dunn and Marcos then see, finally, the Carnage Crew. They charge towards them as DeVito keeps saying, "You're serious? You're serious?" And then they have a brawl out of the building. And that is how the DVD ends.
And Matt was right, because that bar proves that Ring of Honor is Cheers.
That's right. That's right. They were sitting there at the bar waiting for Vera to drag them home.
That brings us to the end of The Future Is Now. Justin, as the guest, what did you think about revisiting it, and was this worth 3 hours of your Saturday night?
The recording the podcast was great. 3 hours of a rewatch was a big ask for me to watch any wrestling, but I got it done for you guys. You gave me a whole lot of advance time, and I did it, and I watched it. I enjoyed it because I remember this experience a lot more than the show 3 years prior I did, and I think the company is more exciting, and I think a little getting bigger and have more compelling things going on in 2005 than they did in 2002. So yeah, I've never revisited in those 16 years. So as a fun endeavor, that was cool. I had fun at the time with my friend, and one of us said, I'm going to make this a really important hobby to me going forward. And another one of us said, that was cool. Bye. But you know, if Ring of Honor was on TNT every Wednesday night, I'm sure coming out of the show I would have probably watched it, but I don't know, because I'm kind of elitist about indie wrestling and those dregs, but I also thought not just Punk, but Joe and these people were cool and good. But yeah, I have no regrets, guys. I have one more thing in my notes. Is this funny? People in wrestling probably haven't heard of Gregory Hines because he's more well known as Hurricane Hines.
also known as Shane Hines.
Yeah.
Also, I would just say, Justin, much like the macaroni salad, I think you've made the right choice not getting into Ring of Honor, because I've wasted my life. So
I could have been a third co-host if I just committed at that point in time, but our lives diverged. And the DVD did not include, weirdly, the part where Matt and I got up and left. And I was like, well, that's what I remember happening then.
No macaroni salad made the DVD.
We did not ride back the ferry with P. Diddy or whatever cool guy was at the show. And so that's where my experience kind of did not line up with my learned memory.
We did watch One Night Stand that night, and like when everyone was like, this is the most special thing that ever happened, we were like, that Lance Storm Chris Jericho match got no time.
It got no time. Benoit Eddie underdelivered. Ray Psychosis was not even 2.5 stars. What?
Wasn't the Benny? I mean, I said Benny. Wasn't the Benoit? His friends call him Benny, but wasn't the Benoit Eddie Guerrero match the match where like they were basically almost like having a legit argument during the match, which became even more uncomfortable in the future.
Yes,
Eddie had just turned heel and was getting this big push as a heel, so he tapped out clean to the guy who hadn't really been doing a whole lot since he dropped the title. But I think part of that was like, this is not WWE, so crazy stuff can happen. Lance Storm will beat Chris Jericho, etc. But yeah. Yes, Matt and I, I don't want to, we were surprised at the gushing feedback after the show. You and me are probably right. Yeah,
but I mean, but I was like, I think the moment that turned me was Tanaka against Mike Awesome, which, like a match we're about to talk about, is extremely uncomfortable in retrospect. And
Suicide died, and I hope he takes his own life.
Oh my god!
Oh my god!
Did he say that? I forget.
Yes.
Oh dear. Oh god. That's uncomfortable for that reason and many others. And then the RVD promo, and then the main event. Like I think by then I sort of started to get it, but like, yeah, I think I had to watch it back to really be like, okay, this is really what made it so special for everybody. Because I was like waiting for all these great matches.
Me too. What a couple of nerdlingers.
Yep. Yeah, we suck.
So, speaking of a show that didn't have a great match, I would say about the future is now. Matt, it's kind of similar to when we covered Manhattan Mayhem, where it's a New York show. I think the crowd's really good. I think everything is at least good on this show, but nothing is quite great. Although I know on Manhattan Mayhem you disagree about nothing being quite great, but I would say this is a show where I think the floor is even a little bit higher than Manhattan Mayhem, and you'll probably disagree with that. I think everything on the show I would give at least 3 stars to, but I would probably give nothing higher than 3 3/4. It's that kind of show where, and it doesn't quite have, you'll never repeat the atmosphere of the first Manhattan Mayhem show, but it is kind of a cool vibe with, knowing a bunch of those fans were probably really excited to go home and watch go home and watch One Night Stand and
go to watch One Night Stand in person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And all the other wrestling that happened that weekend, and the vibe even of knowing that Punk is probably leaving soon and all that stuff. I really think this is a really consistent, fun show. There's some good variety too, especially like you get your crazy scramble, you get your hardcore match, you get a little bit of comedy, and then you get your quote unquote serious wrestling matches at the end. You get a really memorable, if not uncomfortable, segment with Shane Douglas. I mean, I like the show quite a bit. What'd you think?
Yeah, I definitely don't think it's as good as you. Like, I wouldn't put it in the same universe as Manhattan Mayhem. I didn't like the early matches as much as you, and although except for the 6-man Mayhem, I thought that was really good. I thought that all the work was pretty good and well done, but I thought the show just felt a little dry to me. Like the only real angle progression was Jay Lethal coming back. Otherwise, it felt like much more like a B show to me. Even though the matchups themselves, the pairings were big pairings, like Homicide and Gibson and Aries and Loki, I didn't feel like they were worked like they were big matches. So it felt like kind of a B show, like an uneventful show with solid wrestling. Like this was a show that got me interested in ROH, but it did not get me hooked. Like I think what got me hooked is that right after the show I was more interested, and so I decided to. Then I read the Meltzer praise of Manhattan Mayhem, and I think Gabe hyped up the DVD right when I think it was coming out either right at this point or a week or later, and I got that, and watching that is what oh my god, I have to go to all these ROH shows. And then I went to the next New York show a month later, and then I was off to the races. But I thought this show was good, but I did not think that it was that good, I guess is what I would say. But a worthwhile experience, and certainly a very important experience in my I guess in my life when you think about it, because I'm doing this podcast now. Weird to say, but yeah. So
Matt, we have one last thing to do before we do our goodbyes and plugs and all that, which is just speaking of things you said earlier, promising things and then having to go through with them. I said we were going to review our first match ever that is not Ring of Honor on Through the Years, because you had suggested a couple weeks ago that we, for this show, cover a specific match. And that match is, do you want to talk about why you wanted to do this and what the match is? Yeah,
Justin, don't get mad at me. But I knew that Samoa Joe and Necro Butcher, which is one of the most famous non-ROH indie matches ever, happened the day before the show. It was crazy to me that Samoa Joe had this match and then went on to just have a pure title match with Nigel McGuinness the next day. But he did. And I was like, this match is going to fuck with Justin's head so bad.
Oh, no.
But he did not watch it, which is okay. I mean, this is
I didn't refuse. I forgot.
we like this, we gave Justin a lot of homework, so it is not bad of him that he didn't watch it, but it is fair to say that my my approach to it is a little different knowing that. But I mean, that's what gave me the impetus to talk about this match. But the match itself, it was a really big deal. But I actually am not sure at the time if it's more of a big deal in retrospect, because I don't remember hearing about the match beforehand. Not that I was a big, indie follower. And I'm not sure how much I actually heard about the match until maybe months later when it started circulating around the internet. Like, Trevor, was this match something that, was a big deal in your mind before it happened?
Somewhat. So I guess for the background for your people that don't really know why this match was such a big deal is I feel like this for me was one of the last matches ever where worlds collided, because nowadays with mass media, the globalization of media and everything, where everyone watches everything from all over the world, and wrestlers stylistically, they're more homogenized than ever. They're more well-rounded than ever. And back when we were growing up, Matt and Justin, we were, you would see just crazy things when Fit Finlay wrestled some random luchador on a WCWC show in 1996. It felt like different worlds, and you would see styles you've never seen before. And wrestling doesn't have that anymore. And I feel like the appeal of Necro Butcher and Samoa Joe obviously was the work rate indie name, him or maybe Punk or Danielson, but probably Joe. I mean, the guy. And Necro was the deathmatch guy. He was considered to be the craziest deathmatch guy in terms of the punishment he'd take, but also the deathmatch guy that the Death Valley Driver guys would because he had great punches and some psychology, and just he was kind of the smarky beloved. If there was one deathmatch guy you loved, it would be Necro Butcher. So it was a worlds collide from that. It was also two guys both known for being really tough in wrestling, but for completely different reasons. So Matt, what I would say is there was buzz, but probably more among the Death Valley Driver people. And then I think it got a second wider range of buzz in the months afterwards when the tapes circulated, people watched and were holy shit, this is fucking crazy. And maybe even then a third level of buzz you have to think, because you have to think Necro, I think, basically probably got this match is very influential in the sense of after this match, the idea of booking a big deathmatch guy against a big just indie ROH style superstar became much a more common trope, and Necro Butcher just against serious wrestlers became he ended up having a career in places like Ring of Honor. And then even you would look at a guy like Nick Gage, and I think Nick Gage in a lot of ways is very different from Necro Butcher, but Nick Gage is kind of walking the path that Necro Butcher started here, which is the kind of the guy who does the crazy death matches, but also is the kind of the one deathmatch guy the regular indie fan also likes and will watch him in straight up matches and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, this match put Necro on my radar. I didn't follow deathmatch wrestling at all and wasn't an IWA Mid-South viewer. This was the first Necro Butcher match I ever saw. And it just freaking blew my mind. Should I get into it? What, the play-by-play and stuff?
Yeah, I guess the only other background I can offer is I watched some shoot interview stuff with Necro, and Necro apparently had no sleep. He just was coming back from Japan, from Big Japan. And for people watching this match, keep in mind this was a double shot where for this weekend on this day, this was the day before The Future Is Now, IWA Mid-South and CZW jointly rented out ECW Arena, and they ran one show after the other there on the same night. And Necro Butcher worked another hardcore tag match against Nick Gage and somebody else right after this, on the next show. And I guess the other background I'll give before I finally get to you, Matt, because I actually did some research on this, because I can't not do research apparently, but is I don't know how much of this is real, but Necro claims in shoot interviews that Ian had wanted to book this match months earlier, and Joe did not want to wrestle Necro Butcher. He didn't want to wrestle Necro Butcher. And then there was a match where I believe it was Necro Butcher and Madman Pondo versus two Ring of Honor students in Chikaro, or it might have been IWA Mid-South. And Joe and some people thought that Necro and Pondo took liberties with the ROH students. And it was at that point that Joe decided, you know what, I do want to fucking wrestle this guy, apparently. And apparently, I sent you an MP3 I found on old DVD-R I had of or DVD-R, just of a Joe promo from an IW Mid-South show building up this match, where I have never heard Joe sound that angry, where he is just talking about Necro taking advantage of these students, and how the Necro Butcher, he's just screaming, he's fucking, at one point the fans start applauding Joe, and he's like, no, shut up, let me finish, even though he's not a heel, because he just has to tell these fans, I am going to fucking kill this guy, I legit do not like this guy. And I guess that leads to the match.
Now, how much of that do you believe? Just honest question. Because, it is wrestling. They're going to say this is real to get it over, right?
I think he's probably playing up some of it. I think it's probably like a lot of things in wrestling. He took a legit thing and then amplified it for the sake of pro wrestling. Necro says after the match, they shook hands, but didn't really talk or anything. So, and the other interesting thing, Matt, that I noticed, Necro says that he called this entire match. He said, when Joe had offense, he didn't tell Joe, what to do necessarily, but, in terms of the structure of the match and when, which guy got to let up and all that stuff, he said, and, the story of the match at the end and all that, Necro says it was all me who did that. So, big feather in his cap, I would say.
Yeah, if that's true.
Yes, if it's true.
Right. But as far as the match, all right. So Justin, I'm gonna play this out for you.
Okay.
Now, first of all, if there's actually somebody who listens to the show regularly who has not seen this match, it's on YouTube. Easy to find. The full match. In fact, the YouTube video includes the match twice from different camera angles the second time. That's how much effort IWA put into this. But the commentators are Dave Prazak, CM Punk, Eddie Kingston, and the commentary is extremely different from ROH commentary. This is the only really intense, hard-hitting, brutal, hate-filled brawl I've ever seen, where the commentary is the announcers just having a ball, laughing and going nuts at all the moves, right? They're not trying to get over any hatred or anything like that. They're just what the hell is happening here, right? And laughing a lot. But I don't think it detracts from the match. Do you, Trevor? No.
This is the epitome of the IWA Mid-South feels like a friend on your couch commentary. Just reacting with you.
They're laughing and it adds to the match. It's not it's not like Dusty Rhodes laughing at, the cruiserweights. You know what I mean? So just with that in mind. So Bryce Ramsberg's the referee. So Joe and Necro, they go toe-to-toe, and they both shove Remsburg, and then Joe just chucks him out of the ring, and they start forearming each other in the face. The crowd just, at this point, is on their feet, and they do not sit down at all for this entire match. Joe hits a sudden enziguri in the middle of the forearm exchange, then hits the tope suicida, goes outside. He starts kicking Necro, who's in a chair in the crowd, and then Necro just stands up and starts headbutting him. And at this point, Punk makes his first Rob Naylor reference, saying that Rob Naylor's probably going apeshit right now. And these headbutts, I believe, have busted Necro open hard way. I don't think he ever blades, do you?
No, and in fact, he said also on the shoot that he had an existing really bad cut from the Big Japan show, so he was like, I knew early if I just, touched it, I'd start bleeding.
Yeah, so he bleeds a lot hard way. Then Necro just chucks chairs at Joe in the crowd, and the crowd just tries to stand out of the way. And Necro, then he starts charging at Joe in the crowd, and Joe does his snap power slam, but instead of getting him, spinning him over onto his back, Necro just lands on his forehead. Power slam position, but think the guy doesn't get over. He just lands on the top of his forehead. And I mean, I've seen this match 100 times. I still can't figure out if this was intentional. I guess it was. It wasn't a botch.
Punk even says, how can a guy take a power slam on his forehead? But that is what happens.
Yeah. And the thing that made me crazy is, the announcing in IWA was done live. It wasn't, post-production. And yet none of the announcers seem worried. Like they're just like there wasn't like Eddie Kingston's just like, what the fuck? That's awesome. Like it's just like their colleague had just been like spiked on his head on concrete. But yeah, he's gushing blood continuously. Joe doesn't seem worried either. He chucks more chairs at Necro's head. Does the ole ole kick. I think this is the only time I've ever seen the ole ole kick done in the crowd. But he does it. He's just bleeding, falling all over the place. Joe now puts him in the ring and gets the first near fall as the crowd starts their dueling chants. And Punk mentions Rob Naylor again and then goes, I'm name dropping Rob Naylor for the love of Christ, which is one of the all-time great commentary lines. And Eddie Kingston's just like, yeah, Rob Naylor is in the crowd somewhere. Then Necro comes back with a running Yakuza kick. And then he just decides to take an entire section of the guardrail from the aisleway and just throw it at Samoa Joe. And then again throws it on top of him. And then he hits a senton, which he tries to land on the guardrail on top of Joe, but he just like completely misses the guardrail, but that's okay. Then Necro starts punching Joe on the apron. So Joe goes for an exploder off the apron, but again, think about this, an exploder, right? You take a guy from you hold him over his shoulder, the other from under his leg, like a T-bone suplex, right? If you don't know this move, Justin. And you're supposed to take the guy, flip them over onto their back, but Joe does it from the apron onto the concrete floor, and again, instead of going over, Necro lands on his forehead. And so Kingston says, holy shit. Prazak one-ups him and goes, holy fuck. And so Necro is bleeding completely like nuts. Joe throws more chairs at him. They go back in the ring. Joe takes the guardrail and bridges it along the middle rope in the corner. Then Joe power bombs Necro on the propped up guardrail, tries to pin him with one foot. Necro kicks out. Kingston and then Prazak, they ask Punk, they say, okay, so what would you do here? What's your strategy at this point? And Punk goes, I would sign a contract with WWE and run far, far away. And so at that point, Punk also mentions that he's going to get a car and run Necro over. And if Necro kicks out, Punk's just going to drive into the ocean. Joe then German suplexes Necro on an open chair, gets another 2 count. Necro starts just fighting back with punches, and Joe covers up, and then he just wails on him with the palm strikes and the knee strikes and knocks him down, tells the ref to count for a knockout. Necro starts to stand up, so Joe just punts him in the head one more time, and Remsburg keeps counting him out, and Necro can't answer the 10 count, so Joe wins by knockout. And yeah, the crowd's going insane. Every time I watch this match, I go insane because it's brutal. I'm not sure if I'm a bad person for enjoying this at this point. Just like, knowing everything about concussions and even just Necro himself, he's not like he's still wrestling and stuff like that. Necro's just destroyed. But it's one of the most entertaining matches you could ever watch if you can handle how brutal it is. It's so fast-paced and constant, and everything has meaning, and it's just there's never a not exciting moment, and the crowd's going nuts. And I would say, even though Necro was destroyed, I would say this match in some ways kind of made his career for a few years.
Absolutely. Yeah,
I'm not sure if he ever has ROH. I'm not sure if he ever does The Wrestler. It also, I think, adds a lot to Samoa Joe's legacy. Samoa Joe had some, what I would consider, and a lot of people consider 5-star matches in 2005, right? The Kobashi match, obviously, the 3-way in TNA, some of the other TNA matches, but this is one of them. This is one of just the fact that he can do this and do all that, and I don't know, this was why 2005 was just Samoa Joe's year, And I think this is the first of those really incredible Joe matches that, are unforgettable. After the match, Necro pops up and punches Joe, and actually Joe runs away from him. And that is how the segment ends.
Necro claims in the shoot, again, this is just Necro, that there was supposed to be a larger pull apart between them two, but after the punch, Joe just ran to the back. And we should mention there is a rematch to this. Like they do have a rematch. It's a completely different kind of match that it's not as good. I think it's still really good, but they do in 2006. There is a rematch, but so I would say this match is fantastic.
Would you say it's a 5-star match just given its historical importance?
I think so. I think it's just the craziest spectacle. It's like an unforgettable match. It's it's under 10 minutes, but it's to me this is like the wrestling equivalent of King Kong versus Godzilla. It's like they're just two different kinds of monsters from different worlds just destroying each other. I forgot, like I always thought of it as just Joe squashing Necro, but Necro gets a good amount of offense, although yes, by the end Joe is just destroying him. But just so brutal. And I love it's not really a huge story, but I like the idea of like every time, like if you keep watching for me, if there's a story to the match, it's like Necro keeps dragging Joe into Necro's world. And then Joe like out Necro's Necro. Like when they go into the chairs and stuff, eventually by the end, Joe is throwing chairs at Necro, or like, also, or like the guardrail, Necro brings in the guardrail, but at the end of the day, the biggest guardrail spot is Joe doing something to Necro. It's like everything Necro tries that's like his specialty, Joe ends up, using against him in a bigger way. And it's just such a brutal, memorable match. And yeah, this is a super important match, I would say, for Necro Butcher especially. Obviously, I feel like this match, like he was already a big deathmatch star. He was working, like IW Mid-South, CZW, Big Japan. But like after this match, he became the guy that would get booked anywhere on the indies against anybody. He was no longer just having to be in the deathmatch world. And I also think like, the trend in the indies, of what happens if we put a big deathmatch guy against a big, like just work rate indie guy, that started with this match. So it was influential in that sense too. And again, I wouldn't say Nick Gage owes his career to Necro Butcher or anything like that. But again, I would say, like I said before, he's walking a path that kind of Necro started here, that kind of how you could kind of be more than a deathmatch guy. And a couple just little quick things. I would say there's a punch Necro throws, and they showed on the replays when they're on the apron to Joe. And he hits Joe so hard, flush in the side of the head. It is a punch if I had gotten hit in that hard in a wrestling match, I would be like angry. Like it is just a brutal, legit punch in the head. And also, Matt, you did a great job recapping the match. I don't have much to say because you did such a great job, and we've already gone so long. But I will say, for a funny moment, again, this is a match you can watch free legally. IWA Mid-South uploaded it to YouTube, so you should absolutely watch it if you've never seen it. But early on...
If you can handle the brutality for the...
Yes, if you can handle it. Yeah, it's very bloody, very brutal. But early on when they go into the crowd, there's a security guard that tries to, like, work when they're brawling the crowd, and I can only describe it as Necro Butcher traveled from the present to watch himself wrestle because he looks like Necro Butcher today, like the long white beard. He's skinnier.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks stunningly like Necro Butcher is watching Necro Butcher wrestle. Like, if someone told me, if like Robert Stack came on to tell me that this is an unsolved mystery and no one ever saw that security guard again, I would be like, that was the fucking Necro Butcher in a time machine, because it made me burst out laughing watching it today in 2021. But, yeah, unbelievable match. And it is crazy that match, happened the day after, Hardcore Homecoming, the day before ECW One Night Stand, and before, the Future Is Now. And I will say this one last thing, and then we'll go to the plugs. But I think something we've talked about before, a theme so far with 2005 Ring of Honor has been like, there's been a few great matches, but it's been a year where like, I think the overall standard of quality is the highest it's ever been, but like maybe compared to some of 2004, the top end matches aren't as plentiful. But would you say like Necro Butcher versus Joe, I would say, is easily better than anything we've seen in Ring of Honor so far in 2005?
Oh yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a 5-star match. Like it's one of the all-time legendary indie matches. So yes, but we got the second half of 2005 coming, and I feel like some of that might change.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying that would end up being our match of the year if this was in Ring of Honor, but up to this point, it was clearly, which is kind of crazy because, Necro Butcher was not well regarded by a lot of people at this point, and, Ring of Honor was but Joe and Necro had a match I think is better than anything Joe has done in Ring of Honor this year, anything Ring of Honor had done so far this year, but yeah, we'll see if that changes soon. But
Justin, have we made you want to watch this match?
You made me feel bad that I didn't watch it. You made it sound like a midnight movie.
That's what really mattered. Which is
as long as we don't care if you enjoy it in the future, just as long as you feel bad.
I'm really sorry. I watched the wrong match because Matt said it was on YouTube.
What did you actually watch a match of the wrong match?
I just put it in and it came up and I got confused. I watched Necro Butcher versus Randy the Ram Robinson. My review of that is some of the staple spots made me uncomfortable. They're doing glass, they're doing barbed wire, and I did not, I wouldn't recommend it to you guys. If you haven't seen it, I guess seek it out, but, Randy honestly looked unhealthy in the match, and, there's legit fireworks going on outside, wow. Yeah, he was sweating in what seemed like a kind of a less than healthy way. He seemed like he had chest pains maybe, and I didn't like it. At the end of the clip, they advertise a Randy versus the Ayatollah match, and I had no interest in seeing that after watching this because I didn't like it. I think he needs maybe more of a guy like Joe to kind of take his style and blend it with a strong kind of wrestling, whereas Randy is just kind of like a stunt show thing, and you really don't have a fun experience watching him do those spots. So sorry again.
So
what's your star rating, Justin?
I would go 2 3/4 because this is still Randy the Ram. He's a pro, and his facials were good. But a lot of quick cuts in the match. It seemed like parts of it were ellipsed in a weird way, like Kevin Dunn kind of cut to this, cut to this, cut to this.
WWE influenced.
You guys think it's weird that Chris Jericho was so mad that Mickey Rourke wouldn't wrestle him that he decided to book him?
Yep, he decided. But again, that was just to make him more intimidating in Japan.
So, Justin, obviously, thank you. I mean, I never laugh as much as when you are on a podcast in front of a microphone, and I am also in front of a microphone. And thank you so much. And obviously, I plugged a lot of the shows you've been on up top, but you plug, obviously, here anything you want people to listen to, or your Twitter, or read, or anything. What do you have to plug?
Okay, well, yeah, it was a joy to be with my dearest friends since 1999. Sounds right to me.
So we were young teens,
we were snot-nosed punks. That's why now, if there's people being weird about wrestling culture war or AEW stuff, I'm like, oh, well, I'm very old. When I was posting on the internet, if someone was as old as me, I'd be like, you don't count. You're so weird and old. So I'm just have your fun, be weird. This is so weird. Why is this your life? But carry on. And but thanks again. And I did try and hold my own. And to people who really just want to hear about Ring of Honor, I'm sorry if I took it away. But I did go to this show. That's truth fact. And those are my insights.
Justin,
in terms of
you're apologizing makes you fit right in on this show.
Exactly.
Just remember, me and Matt are kindred spirits and the nicest boys who wouldn't even take money for our ticket scalping. Probably because we were scared it was a crime.
It's crime.
Plugs. Okay, so a lot on this show. We have talked about Samoa Joe taking on all comers across the globe. He fought a guy from the UK. He fought someone from, I guess, the backwoods or the Necro realm.
The Necro realm.
So if you like Joe's Who Versed the World, I was on the Joe versus the World Anniversario show. We made sure to wait just long enough to do a show again to where the people who asked us when we would be doing another one stopped asking us. But You two, as far as a pair of co-hosts who do historical retrospectives that are very detailed and informative, really put us to shame as far as consistency. But
and we're extremely inconsistent.
Yeah, in this round, we're considered to be lazy. So.
Well, you are an inspiration, and we got it together one more time for all the nice people who were, in all sincerity, extremely nice. And you can find that on the CubsFan.com website. Joe versus the World, covering Q4 of 1997 WWF, McMahon's Circus in Stamford, and also touched on at the top of the show. Yes, I've been a guest on the Elite Beat podcast, where I'm almost as far out of my comfort zone as I am talking about Ring of Honor. But they bring me on to do my clown shtick. That is hosted by, really 3 co-hosts, but the person with the Twitter, his name is Andy Napier at NapDaddy33, and it's called The Elite Beat, and it's on Spotify and wherever RSS feeds are served. Those are my 2 most recent things. And look, Trevor's brother is getting married. He is registered. You can find that in the show links. No. And if you don't want to buy anything off the registry, I'm sure they'd love to have flowers sent to the wedding, or just donations to their favorite charities. So blessings and felicitations to them, and may God bless you all with peace, tranquility, and goodwill.
And by the way, fun fact, I don't think Trevor even knows this yet, but I'm actually going to be the singer at the wedding.
Yes!
Oh, thank God.
I'm mostly going to sing ROH-related parody songs in honor of you. Your brother signed off on it.
Well, now I feel bad that I'm not going to his wedding.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I'll be there in your stead.
Thank you for being my proxy, Matt.
All of Matt's parody songs are about food as well, so that should be fun. Do you have anything about wedding cake?
I don't know. I did find the other day I wrote a parody song when I was younger of "I'm on a Boat," but parody
which
to
is already a parody.
Yes, all about floats, like ice cream floats. I had that saved somewhere on a DVD.
Do you know there is there is a parody of that parody, and it's extremely niche. Some idiot who is not super. This is not me, like telling a sideways story. This is real. In 2009. July, I guess, someone wrote a parody recorded and uploaded to YouTube with a video. It's a parody of "I'm on a Boat," and it's called "I Won the Cup," and it is a song about the Pittsburgh Penguins who won the Stanley Cup in 2009, and it's like, "I won the cup, and I'm skating fast, and it's like, I'm the boss of the league on the cutting checks from Shapiro. If you're on the wings, then you're sure not Mio," and it's very good.
You really sell it good.
If you're like extremely specifically know the players of the 2009 Pittsburgh Penguins. So. But yours sounds actually good. You should expand on it.
So, if anyone wants to get in contact with Matt and I, which I don't know if you would after some of the things we've said this episode, ThROH@gmail.com is our email, THROH for through, at Trevor Dame on Twitter, at Mayor MGF on Twitter. And we have a thread on the Pro Wrestling Only Plugs thread that no one posts in, but that's fine. So next time on the show, Matt and I will be starting a crazy new chapter because the summer starts late June officially, and we will be starting the Summer of Punk. It will be the summer of Punk, because the next time we will be covering Death Before Dishonor 3, Punk versus Austin Aries, Punk's final match in Ring of Honor, wink, wink, plus Jay Lethal versus Low Key, plus lots of other stuff. And it will also be episode 69, so it will literally be the summer of 69.
Which Trevor experienced as young as 16.
Hey, that was 17. That part was 17. Anyway, moving on.
Episode 69 is really going to turn things upside down.
Yeah. You have to save some things. Oh, boy. Until next time, have a good time. Have a great time.